Do you like Harry Potter? Do you like fun facts? Do you like hours of Harry Potter fun facts? Well, if yes is all of those answers, then stick to this video because we're going to have hours of Harry Potter fun facts going from Sorcerer's Stone to Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. One video, all the fun facts. This is a compilation of all the fun facts that I've done this year, so sit back, enjoy, and maybe you'll hear some things about Harry Potter that you have never heard before. I made them up. I'm just kidding. There are some fake facts in earlier editions of my fun facts, but just sit back and relax and enjoy, and happy holidays. Whether you are a fan of Harry Potter or a fan of theme parks, do you know everything there is to know about the Wizarding World of Harry Potter parks within Orlando? Today we are going to be talking about 31 plus facts about the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Hogsmeade, Diagon Alley, and the Ministry of Magic. You may know some of these, whether you're preparing for a trip or whether you're just a big fan of Harry Potter and theme parks. All of these facts are for you. So without further ado, let's get started with fact number 1. If you've never been to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter within Orlando, you are actually missing out on 4 exclusive rides only found in Orlando. If you've been to the other Wizarding World parks, you at least get to experience 2 of them, but there's 4 missing that you do not get to ride. And those are the Hogwarts Express, both ways from Diagon Alley to King's Cross to Diagon Alley, the Escape from Gringotts, which only takes place within Diagon Alley, which is only in Universal Studios Orlando, Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure, which is only exclusive to Islands of Adventure, even though the other 2 iterations of Hogsmeade are also of the same area. And finally, the new Epic Universe Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry, which of course can only be found at Epic Universe. But as you are riding one single ride that is in every iteration of Wizarding World of Harry Potter Hogsmeade, you have to think this was an original ride for Islands of Adventure. It has been a little bit rethemed. It was once called the Flying Unicorn, but then was rethemed to Flight of the Hippogriff, which then was remade in the other Wizarding World of Harry Potter Hogsmeade iterations. If you do take your wand to Epic Universe and hit all of the magical wand spots, you will come across many different fantastic beasts. I won't tell you where to find them, but I will tell you which ones to look for. You're going to be looking for the Grindylow, as well as the Niffler, and finally, don't miss the Demiguise. With so many wand interaction spots to be able to choose from, did you know there are 4 hidden magic spells that you have to find help to figure out how to do those spells? Well, I won't tell you what the spells are, but I will tell you where to find them. The first spell is within Diagon Alley. It's going to be in the Scribulous window to the right of the Feather Quill, which is another Scribulous window where there is a magical spot. But there is one next to it where there's a magical scroll where if you use a spell, it will reveal text that has been hidden on the scroll. And don't think to just do it once. If you have a chance to do it multiple times, you'll be able to see multiple messages. Now, the mystery spell number 2 is in the far right window of Slug and Jigger's Apothecary. This one is also in Diagon Alley. When you use a spell, a suspicious barrel full of gook starts to bubble up, and then you start to smell something rotten. Oh, those were dung bombs. Whoops. The final spell is also within Diagon Alley, but it is specifically in Nocturne Alley. There is also another magic spot right where you will be standing, but this one's not too hard to find. It's just hard to access because, number 1, it is a 2nd generation only interactive wand spot that is hidden. And you not only have to have the 2nd generation wand, but you have to have it connected to your Universal Play app and finish all of the missions leading up to it. Then you can go to this spot, which is the iron bars that block a set of stairs. It's where you use Incendio for one of this wand spots. But if you do everything right and find this location, you may meet a Dementor. It's the worst part of Azkaban. Where are the Dementors? And the final spell is within the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Ministry of Magic, located within the 1920 streets of Paris of Epic Universe. This location is outside the Librairie Magelad. Pardon my French, literally. This is also a 2nd generation wand only spot, but what you do is if you learn the magic spell, you can compete against a timer to cast as many spells as you possibly can. So let's see how well you can do on that, and let me know in the comments below if you've tried any of these. Now, as you're coming towards Diagon Alley, before you enter into the magical world, check out the record shop next to the Leaky Cauldron. If you're a fan of Universal, you may notice that some of those records seem to have sly references to what used to be. In the record shop, there are references to Jaws, which was the ride that was once where Diagon Alley stands. Now, instead of a burned, bloody shark, we get a fire-breathing dragon. It's a pretty good trade-off if you ask me, but I will always miss the ride that was. Now, after you see the record shop and make your way into Diagon Alley, make sure to watch out for a dripping sign, because the Leaky Cauldron sign outside of the Leaky Cauldron entrance is actually leaky. Just watch where you step, because you'll see a puddle of water on the floor, and then if you look up, you'll see the sign that is leaking. But all in all, in a hot day in Orlando, maybe it's not too bad to have a leaky sign leak on your head. Might be a little rusty. Now, if you ever find yourself within the Owlry of Hogsmeade, make sure to grab a letter and send it off, because this is a nice free souvenir if you already bring your mail, because they will stamp any mail that you send with a Hogsmeade stamp. It's free, and you could just bring an envelope. You may have to buy stamps. Actual shipping stamps, not included. So make sure to bring those. Now, if you do find yourself in Nocturne Alley, in Borgin and Burke's, make your way to the back of the shop, where you'll see a mysterious cabinet. It's very familiar. Do not step inside. But if you put your hand on the handle, you may hear quite mysterious sound of a canary, and then it will disappear. Is Draco Malfoy testing the vanishing cabinets again? Well, we won't know. Now, back in Hogsmeade, be careful when using the restrooms, because you may have an unwanted guest while you're trying to use the loo. Because unfortunately, Moaning Myrtle has found a new residence within the Hogsmeade bathrooms and is causing quite a fuss. She's banging against pipes and screaming and wailing, and it kind of makes it a little awkward when you're trying to pee. Oh well, when you gotta go, and I'd rather go there than having raptors. How many types of butterbeer do you think the Wizarding World of Harry Potter has? Did you say 3? Did you say 4? Did you say 8? Well, all of those are wrong, because there's 9. I know. 9 types of butterbeer. That's freaking ridiculous, right? But it's not. It's so delicious. It's one of my favorite parts of going to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. But I'm sure most of you could probably guess at least 3. You've got cold, you've got frozen, and you've got hot butterbeer. Those are the 3 that everybody knows. But did you know there's 3 different types of butterbeer ice cream? Because I definitely didn't before doing this. I knew of at least 1. I didn't realize they were 2 different types of ice cream. When you go into Florian and Fortescue's, you can order not only butterbeer ice cream in a cup, which is scooped ice cream, but you can order it in a cone, which is soft serve. So that's 2 different types of butterbeer. What's the 3rd? Well, introduced recently with the butterbeer extravaganza month that they were having at Universal, and may stay, we're not sure, is the butterbeer flavored ice lolly. So a butterbeer popsicle. I know it's not exactly ice cream, but it's a frozen treat. And a treat it truly is. Now, the last 3 are some of the more unique types of butterbeer, because it makes sense. You have liquid butterbeer. It's easy to turn it into a creamy dessert. But speaking of creamy dessert, we also have the butterbeer potted cream, which is basically just a butterbeer pudding, but it's delicious. And you can't tell me otherwise. The other 2 are the butterbeer fudge, which has been there since day 1. It's delicious. It's a lot, but so is fudge in general. Have I eaten a whole block of butterbeer fudge? Yeah, I have. Am I ashamed of it? No, I'm not. But one of the newer additions is the butterbeer crepe. And if you think the butterbeer fudge is a lot, the butterbeer crepe is so rich and decadent. Did you know that strawberries went well with butterbeer? Because I didn't until I had this crepe, which had strawberries on it, and I ate it with the butterbeer crepe, and it was delicious. I do recommend that if you are going to have it, you share with someone, because one human should not eat more than half of that, because you will throw up, because you will eat it all, and then you will go on Battle of the Ministry, and it will shake it out of you. I would recommend getting it after Battle of the Ministry. As you're making your way from Hogsmeade to Diagon Alley, aboard the Hogwarts Express, keep a sharp eye out as you start to see lightning flash. When you're looking out the window, right in front of Malfoy Manor, a quick blink and you'll miss it. Literally. It's as quick as lightning, because when the lightning strikes, you will see Voldemort standing in front of the Malfoy Manor, holding up his wand, but then the next time the lightning strikes, it's just a tree. Was it all in your head? Or did it really happen? Maybe both. Now, as you're in Diagon Alley, if the day is not windy, you may see the Ukrainian Ironbelly spit fire. But I will let you know, check the weather and talk to the cast members that are around to make sure that the Ukrainian Ironbelly is going to shoot off fire, because you do not want to waste your precious time within the parks waiting for a dragon to spew fire who chooses not to. You cannot make your schedule around a dragon. A dragon makes its schedule around whatever it feels that day. And if it's too windy, they do not let it shoot off fire because it is too close to the buildings. And if you're fans of the movies, which I assume you probably are, and want to see actual movie props, make sure to make your way over to Madame Malkin's, where you can see actual costumes worn within the Harry Potter movies. They have many of the actors' dress robes and dresses that were worn within the movies. You have Hermione's Yule Ball dress. I think Fleur Delacour's dress is also in there. So make sure to check it out because those are real props that you can't see anywhere else. Now, as you're eating in the Three Broomsticks in Hogshead Inn, keep an eye in the rafters because you may see shadows moving, but don't be worried. Those are just the house elves cleaning up. You know, house elves don't really like to be seen. A sign of a good house elf is no house elf. But if you actually want to get a glimpse of the face of a house elf, make sure to head over to 12 Grimmauld Place and just look in the window, because every so often, Creature will stick his pointy little nose out of the window and just glare at the people down in the street. He does not like those muggle bones. And while we're on the topic of hidden magical creatures, make sure to look up while you're in the magical menagerie. You might be able to catch a glimpse of the crumpled horn snorkack, the elusive creature that Luna Lovegood always seems to be talking about. This one's quite obvious, and I'm sure somebody will say this is not really a fun fact, but to those of us who are true fans, we get excited when we get to go to magical locations that we see in the movies. And throughout the parks, there are so many different small locations that are places that we've seen within the movies. Diagon Alley as a whole is just breathtaking on your first entry, sometimes on your third or fourth or 19th. You know, it's so crazy how good it looks, as well as the new Epic Universe, walking into the Ministry of Magic. 1920s Paris, it's cool. I don't have an attachment to that. But going through the Flu Network and popping out in the Ministry of Magic atrium, which looks like a 1-to-1 scale of where Harry, Voldemort, and Dumbledore fought it out for Harry's soul, is just jaw-dropping. But then also being able to see the Hogwarts castle in the distance, there's no words. But there are so many different places throughout the 3 Wizarding World parks that just match 1-to-1 locations from the movies. So make sure to check them all out and find your favorite one. Now, on the topic of locations, let's talk about the wands that surround the portal into 1920s Paris from Epic Universe. So the Chronos portal that you enter into to get into the Wizarding World of Ministry of Magic has wands all along the sides. Specifically, it has 9 different wands. 4 on the left, 4 on the right, and 1 held up high in the middle. We will go through each of those wands. On the left, you have Voldemort, Harry, Ron, and Hermione. On the right, you have Newt Scamander, Tina Goldstein, and Queenie Goldstein, as well as Grindelwald's original wand. And in the center, you have Dumbledore's wand, specifically the Elder Wand, but I think at this point it is supposed to be Dumbledore's wand. Actually, in canon, it's Harry's wand based on the time of the story that takes place within the ride, maybe. If you're interested in the story of the parks, make sure to check out a video I put out about 2 weeks ago about the story of the Wizarding World parks. Now, talking about the entrance to Epic Universe, let's talk about the exit from the Wizarding World. The Phoenix Arch, in its majestic glory as you walk in, is beautiful. But as you turn around when you walk in, the artistry within it is absolutely gorgeous. But to mirror the entrance, the exit has details mostly the same. So in the middle, of course, as a representative Dumbledore with his Elder Wand held above his head, you have Fawkes, the Phoenix, spread wide over the arch. I know it's not exactly Fawkes, but you know, in this representation, I think it is. Then on the right, all of the magical creatures on that side are magical creatures that we see within the Harry Potter series. And then all the creatures on the left are magical creatures that we see within the Fantastic Beasts series. All of them are magical creatures, but they are separated by Fantastic Beasts and Harry Potter. Now, as you walk the streets of 1920s Paris, if you have your wand out, you better also have a wand permit, because if not, you may be approached by an Auror who will start to question you on why you are a strange wizard in a strange land. Why are you here and where's your wand permit? Are you up to no good? But you could also meet colorful characters as well as an Auror, as in students from the local school Beauxbaton, Ilvermorny from America, and also a transfer from Hogwarts, walking the streets doing a project on magical creatures. They may even bring out their magical textbook, the Monster Book of Monsters. But make sure you do not put your hand near it until after they stroke the spine. But if you are a fan of magical creatures, make sure to check out Le Cercle des Arcanues, which may have a surprise cameo. I'm not going to ruin it for you here, but you will be pleasantly surprised by the special guest that appears near the end. And with all these content creators going to Epic Universe, they all seem to keep saying, I'm so excited to use the Flu Network for the first time. I'm sorry to break it to you, but if you've been to Hogwarts, you've used the Flu Network. Because within Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, when you're in the room of requirements and Hermione tells you to say astronomy tower, you're flu traveling to get to the astronomy tower from the room of requirements. I'm not trying to take the magic away. Just saying. If you've been to Hogwarts, you have already traveled by flu. Congratulations. You're a natural at it. You didn't even know that you were traveling by flu. Over the years, Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey within the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Hogsmeade has gone over many changes. Of course, there are 3 iterations of this ride throughout the world, but the original ride opened up where you had to wear 3D glasses. And with the jostling of the ride, the moving of the screens, and the wearing of the 3D glasses, a lot of people didn't make it out of that ride the same. Most people complained of nausea. Some people actually did vomit on the ride, but eventually they took away the 3D to make it more accommodating to those who ride it. Plus, 3D glasses are expensive, and I'm sure the park realized it's probably better off that we just get rid of that. There's so much 3D and people don't like it, and we appreciate it. It will be going through refurbishments coming up shortly, so hopefully maybe it'll be a smoother ride and more updated to follow along with Monsters Unchained. Now, if you've ever visited Ollivander's, you know his main component with pairing a wizard with a wand is that the wand chooses the wizard. Those who have studied wand lore know this much. But if you were walking through the 1920 streets of Paris and run into Cosmere, she may beg to differ. To her, wands are fashion statements. Find the wand you like and you will always be happy. So it depends on what your preferences are, but sometimes the wand chooses a wizard and other times the wizard chooses the wand. So yes, with Epic Universe's introduction, we are actually able to visit the Ministry of Magic. But there's not only one entrance to the Ministry of Magic, there's 2 different entrances to 2 different Ministry of Magics. So yes, you have the Metro Flu, which does take you to the Ministry of Magic. The one I am talking about is everyone probably already knows this one. To get into the British Ministry of Magic, outside of Diagon Alley, there's a phone booth, which can take you to the Ministry of Magic. It is the visitor's entrance. But within the 1920 streets of Paris, there is the entrance to the French Ministry of Magic that Newt Scamander took to enter the French Ministry of Magic. There's a small gazebo in the middle of the courtyard outside of Bar Moonshine. So if you wondered what the importance of that little gazebo was, that's what it was. It's the entrance to the Ministry of Magic in France. Now, if you ever wanted to use the visitor's entrance to the British Ministry of Magic, make sure to dial 62442, which spells magic, and you'll get the operator, who will let you know that the Ministry of Magic is closed today. At least that entrance is. You may have to take the Flu Network this time. And while you're outside of Diagon Alley, using the phone, make sure to call up the night bus and go behind the back of the night bus. I know it feels out of bounds, but you can actually go into the night bus if you go through the back and get pictures of the inside of the night bus. Very exciting. So another little Easter egg for the passing of time throughout the series is when Hogsmeade first opened, Zonko's and Honeydukes were 2 different shops. You had Honeydukes products, you had Zonko's products. But then along came Diagon Alley and the introduction of Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, who became so successful, they ended up buying both Zonko's and Honeydukes and put Zonko's out of business. Did you know that we almost had the Wizarding World of Harry Potter within Disney World? I know that seems kind of weird now with the fact that we have 3 different Wizarding World parks in Orlando, but could you imagine walking in, seeing Cinderella's castle, and then turning left and seeing the Hogwarts castle? What? That would have been weird. Unfortunately, Disney and Rowling split ways because of a disagreement on how they wanted to do the park. Rowling wanted it to feel like a small British village, close alleyways, cramped shops. And Disney said, no, we don't do it that way. This is what we want. And they split ways. And Universal said, we'll take you. And that's what happened. And finally, with the introduction of the Ministry of Magic within Epic Universe, there are a lot of green bricks. Specifically, 125,000 green bricks within the Ministry of Magic. That's a lot. But if you need to pass the time while you're in the extremely long wait line that is Battle at the Ministry, there you go. Prove me wrong. How many bricks are within the Ministry of Magic? That is 31 plus fun facts. So without further ado, we will see you next time. Stay marvelous and Nox. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Marvelous Marauders. In today's video, we will be going over 25 fun facts about Harry Potter and the Philosopher's / Sorcerer's Stone. Wait, I say 25? I thought the title said 26. Oh wait, it does. Thanks for checking. But here's the deal. I'll be giving you 26 facts, but one of them will be fake. So let's see if you can figure out which fact is false. Only the biggest of Harry Potter fans will be able to figure it out. Let me know in the comments which fact is fake, and let's get started. Speaking of started, did you know that Daniel Radcliffe was originally supposed to have green eyes, just like Harry in the books, but when the filmmakers tried to give him the green contacts, he had an allergic reaction, which means they had to stick with his original blue eyes. And while we're on the topic of looks, Emma Watson's first scene as Hermione featured fake buck teeth. But once again, she began speaking and they realized that she couldn't properly deliver her lines, so they just said, we'll use your regular teeth. Now, let's talk about one of the most unforgettable characters in the series, Hagrid. To make him appear larger than life, Robbie Coltrane wore a special, oversized suit. But for wide shots, they used a 6'10" body double wearing a giant papier-mâché head of Robbie Coltrane himself. Speaking of larger than life performances, Richard Harris almost didn't accept a role as Dumbledore. He only agreed after his granddaughter begged him to take it. In fact, he hadn't even read the books before joining the cast. Now, let's talk about one of the most iconic settings, the Great Hall. In the books, its ceiling is enchanted to mirror the sky, but for the film, the production team used real candles suspended on wires. Mostly, because they wanted to make sure that wax didn't drip on the actors. Then they used CGI to later remove the wires to make them look like they're floating. Of course, the grand feast scenes wouldn't have been the same without the food. But did you know that the crew used real food for the feasts? Unfortunately, it rotted quickly under the hot studio lights, so in later films, they had to use prop food instead. Let's switch gears for a moment. Have you ever wondered where the name Mirror of Erised comes from? Well, it's actually just desire backwards. A perfect fit for a mirror that shows your deepest longing. Another interesting detail you might have missed is the inscription on the Mirror of Erised. It reads, Erised stra auruha oit ube Kafru oit on wast, which, when reversed, says, I show not your face, but your heart's desire. Now, while owls might seem like the perfect magical companion, they're actually notoriously hard to train. The snowy owl who played Hedwig required months of training, and even then, working with her proved to be a challenge. On the topic of iconic visuals, Daniel Radcliffe's lightning bolt scar wasn't just a one-time thing. Over the course of the film, the scar had to be applied 5,800 times, including on his stunt doubles. So let's talk about something you've probably noticed in the series. The number 7. It's everywhere. Vault 713 at Gringotts holds the Sorcerer's Stone. There are 7 books, 7 Horcruxes, 7 players on a Quidditch team, and the list goes on. But let's get back to Hagrid. Did you know his first name, Rubius, comes from the Latin word for red? It symbolizes warmth and passion. Where his surname, Hagrid, actually refers to someone who drinks heavily. Fitting for a character who spends so much time at the Leaky Cauldron. Speaking of a lot of time, did you know Nicholas Flamel, the creator of the Sorcerer's Stone, was based on a real historical figure? He was a 14th century French scribe who was rumored to have discovered the secret of immortality. And if you look closely, Snape's very first words to Harry are a subtle clue to his tragic backstory. When he asks about asphodel and wormwood, two plants that symbolize grief and lost love, he's foreshadowing his feelings for Lily Potter. There's other things that he says in there that do roughly translate to how he feels, but you get the gist. Switching to a darker note, Voldemort's name actually comes from the French phrase vol de mort, which translates to flight of death, a fitting name for a Dark Lord who is obsessed with escaping death. And here's an interesting tidbit. The book's title was originally Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, as we all know, but US publishers changed it because Sorcerer's Stone seemed like it might appeal to American readers a little bit more, because philosophers are boring and Americans hate learning. The way we fully learn about how horrible the Dursleys are in the first book is when Dudley throws a tantrum because he has one less present than last year. And from that point on, we understand the Dursleys are the worst of them all. When Emma Watson auditioned for Hermione, she wasn't able to get to the audition, so she had to do a video call for her first audition. And if you're a fan of mythology, you might recognize the three-headed dog guarding the Sorcerer's Stone, Fluffy, is actually based on Cerberus, the guardian of the underworld in Greek mythology, who could also be lulled to sleep with music. Now, let's go back to Harry's scar, the one that was drawn on in the movies like 5,000 times. It actually bears a striking resemblance to the wand movement for Avada Kedavra. You know, the curse that gave Harry the lightning bolt scar in the first place. Does that mean it shoots in that specific pattern? Let's dive a little deeper into Hogwarts traditions. The Sorting Hat's song in the book hints at an important part of the school's history, including the rivalry between Gryffindor and Slytherin that comes up a little bit more in the next book. Also, you know Harry Potter's birthday, July 31st? It's also the author's birthday. It's a small but personal connection between the author and her own protagonist. Now, for some casting magic. Did you know that Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid, Alan Rickman as Snape, and Maggie Smith as Professor McGonagall, may they all rest in peace, were J.K. Rowling's first choices for those roles? Here's some Hogwarts wisdom for you. The school motto is Latin. Draco Dominus Nunquam Titilandis, which roughly translates to never tickle a sleeping dragon. Sound advice, don't you think? Another fun fact, go back to auditions. Rupert Grint's audition was something he really wanted to do. He really wanted to play Ron. And in fact, he wanted to play Ron so badly that he made a rap video about why he'd be the perfect part for the role of Ron Weasley and sent it to the producers. And it worked. Because of course we know it worked. He's Ron Weasley. And finally, let's wrap up with a fact about the final scene of the movie. The final fact about the final scene, which coincidentally was actually the first scene ever filmed. And tying this back to the first couple fun facts, these were the only scenes in the movie where we see Harry with green eyes and Hermione with buck teeth. So the scene where Harry says goodbye to Hagrid at the train station is a fitting way to kick off a magical journey. All right. Which of these fun facts surprised you the most? Did you figure out which fact was fake? Let me know in the comments, and if you want to know more interesting things about Harry Potter, make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. Nox. Welcome back to Marvelous Marauders, everyone. Do you think you know everything there is to know about the Chamber of Secrets? Well, think again. In today's video, we're diving into 27. Yes, I know the title says 28, but there is a very good reason for that. Today, we are going to discuss 27 fascinating facts, mostly about the films. The books do have a little bit to play in the part of it, but it's majority about the films. And there's 27 real facts, but one fake fact. So let's see if you actually know all of these facts by being able to tell me which one is fake. It's behind the scenes of the filming of Chamber of Secrets, so keep your eyes peeled for which one is the fake fact. And it's a pretty good one that you may not even notice. Are you ready to uncover the secrets of the Chamber? Let's get started. It might seem like Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is a relatively quick ride through the wizarding world, especially considering it is based on one of the shortest books in the series. However, the film holds the distinction of being the longest Harry Potter movie in the Wizarding World series out of all 11 films. This extended runtime allowed the filmmakers to stay true to the source material and include so much more detail. Despite being based on one of the shortest novels, the movie introduces us to more magical elements. It develops the characters further and dives deeper into the mystery of the Chamber of Secrets. The extra time was used to show more magical creatures, new locations within Hogwarts, and give more weight to the growing dangers Harry and his friends face. With action-packed sequences like the flying car chase, the Quidditch match, and Harry's encounter with the Basilisk, the film makes the most of every moment, ensuring the story stays faithful to the books as possible. In the world of filmmaking, it's not common for movie sequels to be filmed just days after the original wraps, but that's exactly what happened with Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. The cast and crew jumped right back into the world of Hogwarts just 3 days after the filming of Philosopher's Stone. This quick turnaround meant that actors, particularly the young ones, didn't have to wait long to return to the characters they had just started to embody. However, this came with some challenges. The intense filming schedule meant that the production crew had to work even harder to make sure they didn't miss any details or rush any elements of the film. And considering Chamber of Secrets was released only 1 year after Philosopher's Stone, it made this the only film in the series, aside from Deathly Hallows, which was filmed as one large project, to be shot and released within the same year. The fast-paced nature of filming led to a unique rhythm for the actors who were already comfortable in their roles, allowing them to really dive into the emotional depth of their character. It also helped that the sets and costumes were already established, so the production team could focus on the new, darker elements of the film. One of the most iconic moments in the Chamber of Secrets occurs when Draco Malfoy sneers at Goyle, who is actually Harry at the time, in disguise, Polyjuice Potion and all, and says, "I didn't know you could read." This line, which perfectly encapsulates Draco's arrogance and snobbery, wasn't originally in the script. Instead, it was a spontaneous, unscripted moment that came about when Tom Felton, who played Draco, forgot his actual line during filming. Despite the slip-up, Felton's impromptu remark turned out to be a perfect fit for his character, who regularly belittles those around him. The director and producers were so pleased with how well it worked that they decided to keep the line in. This moment shows how much Tom Felton understood his character and how he was able to improvise in a way that felt completely in line with Draco's character traits. It's a great example of how sometimes those unscripted moments can add an extra layer of authenticity and humor to a scene, enhancing the overall storytelling. On the topic of improvisation, in another instance of unscripted brilliance, the scene where Lucius Malfoy confronts Harry and says, "Let us hope Mr. Potter will always be around to save the day," was also an improvised moment. Jason Isaacs, who portrayed Lucius, felt it was fitting for his character's arrogance and disdain for Harry, so he took the liberty to change it up. What's even more impressive is that Daniel Radcliffe, who played Harry, responded naturally and unscripted, "Don't worry, I will be." The quick off-the-cuff interaction between Isaacs and Radcliffe worked so well that it was kept in the film, and it added a sense of authenticity to the scene. These improvised moments demonstrate the strong chemistry between the actors and their ability to stay in character while also enhancing the film with their spontaneous exchanges. It's another testament to how much freedom the actors had to be their characters, to bring the magical world to life, to be Harry Potter. In a surprising twist of production logistics, the filmmakers had to construct an entirely new row of Privet Drive. This was necessary because the production had lost access to the neighborhood used for the first film. They wanted more money. The original neighborhood had been used for filming the Dursleys' home, and after the first movie wrapped, the crew had to find a new location for the second film. Rather than simply finding another street to film on, the filmmakers decided to build a completely new set of houses to represent the Dursleys' suburban street. This new set, constructed at a studio in England, was incredibly detailed to ensure that it matched the aesthetic of the first film. It had to feel like the same place, complete with the same color schemes and suburban architecture, while still accommodating the new scene and challenges that came with the expanded storyline of Chamber of Secrets. The attention to detail ensured that the Dursleys' house would remain instantly recognizable to the audience. And the new row of houses helped maintain the continuity of the story. This also added the sense that the world of Harry Potter was a living, breathing place, where even the smallest details had to be meticulously planned and executed. During filming, the young cast often spent a lot of time bonding, joking around between takes. One particular instance is the fun camaraderie that came with Rupert Grint, who portrayed Ron Weasley. He decided to draw a very unflattering picture of his co-star Alan Rickman, who played Severus Snape. The picture was a lighthearted sketch that poked fun at Rickman, but little did Grint know that it would lead to an interesting interaction between the two. When Rickman saw the drawing, he didn't just laugh at it. He confiscated it and had Rupert sign it. What's more, Rickman reportedly kept the drawing as a personal memento. This moment highlights not only the playful dynamic between the actors, but also Rickman's sense of humor and his understanding that being part of the Harry Potter series involved both serious and lighthearted moments. It's a charming behind-the-scenes story that speaks to the strong relationships between the cast members who spent so much time together during the making of these films. Despite their on-screen tension, particularly between Ron and Snape, the actors enjoyed a warm and collaborative atmosphere off-screen. The Sword of Gryffindor, a significant magical artifact in the Harry Potter series, was actually a real sword that was used in the films. The filmmakers didn't settle for a simple prop. Instead, they required a sword from an auction, which was a genuine piece of craftsmanship. The sword, however, was far from the final product you see on screen, because it definitely didn't have a ruby hilt and say Gryffindor inscribed on the side of it. The prop department did have to work on modifying the hilt design to give it that iconic look fitting the wizarding world. The intricate jewel-encrusted hilt was crafted to match the style of the other magical artifacts within the series, adding to the sense of magic and history that permeates the Hogwarts universe. The sword is an important symbol for Gryffindor House, as it's used by Harry Potter in critical moments. Including the triumph over the basilisk, its real-world origins added an extra layer of authenticity to its on-screen presence, making it even more impressive when Harry uses it to destroy Tom Riddle's beast, and ultimately thwarting his plans. The filmmakers' decision to incorporate a real sword into the movie demonstrates the level of detail and authenticity they sought to bring to the world of Harry Potter. In Chamber of Secrets, one of the most crucial plot points revolves around Tom Riddle's true identity as Lord Voldemort. To ensure the dramatic reveal of his anagrammed name made sense to audiences around the world, translators faced an interesting challenge. The name Tom Marvolo Riddle had to be carefully adapted so that it could still spell out, "I am Lord Voldemort." In other languages, French for example, Tom Marvolo Riddle became Tom Elvis J. du Sort, which, when rearranged, spells out Je suis Voldemort, which is I am Voldemort in French. This wasn't an easy task. Translators had to ensure the name still made sense within the context of the story while preserving the eerie impact of the reveal. This is a fantastic example of the care and attention that went into making sure Harry Potter was as seamless and immersive as possible for audiences worldwide. It shows how even the smallest details, like a character's name, can be adjusted for cultural accuracy while keeping the essence of the story intact. When you watch the Harry Potter films and see characters like Ron, Hermione, Harry sipping on potions in the Hogwarts corridors, it's easy to assume they're drinking something magical. However, the potions consumed during filming weren't quite as mystical as they appeared on screen. In fact, the crew used a practical but much less magical solution: soup. While the potions were often made to look colorful and mysterious, the substances inside the bottles were usually just various types of soup. This was because soup was an easily adjustable liquid that could be colored and made to look like the potions from the books without the need for special effects or dangerous substances. It also helped to create a more practical and safe environment on set, as actors often had to drink these liquids multiple times during a scene. The decision to use soup as a stand-in for potions highlights the resourcefulness of the production team in making the world of magic feel believable without relying too heavily on complicated effects or even CGI. One of the most memorable aspects of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is Harry's ability to speak Parseltongue, the language of snakes. The rare and eerie ability plays a significant role in the story, especially as Harry tries to understand the mysterious surroundings of the Chamber of Secrets. But did you know that Parseltongue wasn't just a random series of hisses and clicks created by the filmmakers? It was actually developed as a fully functional language with its own phonetic rules. The linguist who created Parseltongue was hired by the filmmakers and was a Cambridge University professor well versed in the study of languages. He developed the language so that it could be used consistently and meaningfully throughout the film. Parseltongue's structure and sounds were carefully constructed to give it an air of mystery and authenticity, which contributed to the sense of danger whenever Harry used it. The level of detail just shows how far the filmmakers went to make even the smallest aspects of this world feel real and immersive. It honestly kind of reminds me of Doctor Who, where William Hartnell was like, last week when I took off, I pulled that lever. You're having me push this button now? That's really weird. I'm going to just pull this lever, and that's just going to be the way I do it every week, because somebody's going to be like, well, why did he pull that lever last week to do the same thing that he's doing this button? He had specific buttons that close the door. I'm going to push this button that closes the door. It's always going to be that button that closes the door. That's what makes it work. One of the most whimsical and magical elements of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is the Weasley's family enchanted Ford Anglia. This flying car plays a pivotal role in rescuing Harry from the Dursleys and adds a touch of humor and adventure to the film. What's fascinating, though, is that the Ford Anglia used in the film was inspired by a car that J.K. Rowling herself used to ride in as a child. The film's production team worked closely with Rowling to ensure that the details of the car matched her memory, down to the color and model. This connection between Rowling's personal history and the magical world she created adds a layer of nostalgia to the scene, especially considering that the car becomes an essential part of the Weasley's family charm. The fact that the car is linked to the author's own experience only reinforces the sense that the Wizarding World is a place grounded in real memories and emotion. Even though it's filmed with magic, the inclusion of this personal detail makes the car even more endearing and ties the Magic of Harry Potter series back to the author's own childhood. And on the topic of the Ford Anglia, as endearing as it was to the author, it did not mean that the cast and crew weren't going to destroy it multiple times. The scene where Ron and Harry crash into the Whomping Willow is one of the most exciting moments in the Chamber of Secrets. This chaotic and dramatic sequence was something that the production team had to go through an astonishing number of Ford Anglias to achieve. How many? 14 to be exact. These cars were used for different shots as the filmmakers needed to capture various angles of the crash, including the tree's violent assault of the car. The Ford Anglia used in the film was a real car modified to look magical and enchanted, with its transformation into a flying vehicle being a key part of the spectacle. However, to make the crash look as realistic and thrilling as possible, the filmmakers were prepared to sacrifice every single one of these cars. Some of the Anglias were specifically built to withstand the physical rigors of being thrown around during the sequence, while others were used for close-up and staged shots. The wreckage wasn't just about getting a few seconds of film, it was about making sure every angle, every detail felt intense and believable. It's a great example of how much effort goes into creating a single memorable moment in the movie, even if it means wrecking multiple vehicles in the process. Rupert Grint's genuine fear of spiders is well documented, and it's something that made filming the famous Aragog scene in Chamber of Secrets all that more challenging. Grint has a severe arachnophobia, as do a lot of people, a fear so intense that even the thought of a large spider caused him distress. So when it came time to film the sequence when Harry and Ron encounter Aragog, the great giant acromantula within the Forbidden Forest, once raised by Hagrid, the terror that Grint displayed on scene wasn't acting. It was 100% real. The filmmakers were fully aware of Grint's fear, and they ensured that the set was as safe as possible, using a combination of animatronics and special effects to create the monstrous spiders. However, that did not make it any easier for Grint to control his phobia in front of the camera. His expressions of fear, his frantic movements, and his genuine terror were all real, and they helped to bring authenticity to the scene. In fact, his distress was so palpable that it made the moment even more relatable for viewers who shared his fear of spiders. Grint's commitment to the role, despite his personal fears, added a layer of realism to one of the film's most intense sequences, making an unforgettable moment in Chamber of Secrets. In the original script for Chamber of Secrets, Hermione was supposed to hug both Harry and Ron in the final scene as a way to celebrate the defeat of the Basilisk and the resolution of the film's events. However, when it came time to film the scene, 11-year-old Emma Watson, who played Hermione, was far too embarrassed to hug both of her co-stars in front of the entire cast and crew. Ew, boys. Being a young actress with added pressure of performing in such a massive production, Watson was understandably uncomfortable with the idea of showing affection in front of everyone. As a result, the scene was modified to fit her comfort level, because Chris Columbus actually knew how to work with kids and did a really good job. The script was adjusted so that Hermione only had to hug Harry. Despite that adjustment, though, Emma still felt a little bit self-conscious and awkward during the moment, and when she hugged Daniel Radcliffe, Harry, she pulled away too quickly for the shot to work. As a result, the filmmakers had to artificially extend the final shot in editing to make it appear as though the hug lasted a little bit longer than it actually did. This little moment behind the scenes not only shows how the cast's real-life emotions influence their performances, but also highlights the pressures young actors had to often face in such iconic roles. Child actors work hard. Shirley Henderson, who portrayed the ghost Moaning Myrtle in Chamber of Secrets, had a quite unique challenge in the role. Despite playing a mopey, misunderstood ghost who resides in the girls' bathroom at Hogwarts, Henderson was 37 years old at the time, making her the oldest actress to ever portray a Hogwarts student, until Jacob Kowalski got a wand and was hanging out with Hogwarts students, but I don't think that counts. In fact, Moaning Myrtle's character is technically still a student at Hogwarts, and Henderson's portrayal of the character was truly an example of acting against type. Many fans were surprised to learn of her age, and that it was not just Harry in a wig, as she convincingly pulled off the high-pitched, whiny voice of a youthful, ghastly teen. Henderson's portrayal of Myrtle was full of quirks and comedic moments, adding a touch of levity to the darker moments in the film. They also used her instead of a child because she shows up later and she's a ghost. She can't age, so using someone older kind of helps prevent, hey, did that ghost age? Her ability to tap into the immaturity and heartbreak of Myrtle's ghostly existence, despite being much older than the character was supposed to be, helped make the role memorable. The decision to cast Henderson at an older age was an interesting one, but it paid off by creating a performance that brought a mix of humor and sorrow to a character that could have been easily one note. The moment in Chamber of Secrets where Harry tricks Lucius Malfoy into freeing Dobby is a pivotal scene, both emotionally and visually, and it kind of sets the story in a certain direction throughout the series. To pull off this trick, Harry needed to hand Dobby a sock, which is a symbolic gesture that binds the Malfoy elf to freedom. However, to make this moment as authentic as possible on screen, Daniel Radcliffe had to do something a little unexpected. He had to shave one of his legs. This was necessary because the sock reveal, which involved Harry rolling up his pant leg to show the sock, needed to look realistic in close-up shots, which, without the shaved leg, the camera would have captured too much contrast between the hair and the skin, breaking the illusion for the audience. Radcliffe was up for the challenge, and while it's a small detail, it helped make the scene more convincing. This quirky moment behind the scenes is one of many ways the actors and filmmakers went the extra mile to ensure the film's authenticity from both an emotional and physical perspective. In Chamber of Secrets, Fawkes the Phoenix is one of the more visually stunning creatures, bursting into flames and being reborn from his ashes. But what many people don't know is the animatronic version of Fawkes was so impressively lifelike that even a seasoned actor like Richard Harris, who played Dumbledore at the time, may he rest in peace, was fooled by it. When Harris first encountered the animatronic bird on set, he genuinely thought it was a real bird. This speaks to just how incredibly detailed the filmmakers made the animatronic version of Fawkes, with lifelike feathers, eyes that seemed to glimmer with intelligence, and movements that were incredibly fluid. It's not every day that a veteran actor gets tricked by a prop, but in this case, the realism of the animatronic bird was so convincing that even Harris couldn't tell the difference. This moment is a testament to the remarkable talents of the film's special effects team, whose attention to detail created a magical creature that felt truly alive. For the terrifying roar of the basilisk in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the filmmakers wanted to create a sound that felt both organic and monstrous, rather than relying entirely on digital effects. The sound design team took a more creative approach, blending the sounds of several real animals to craft the perfect roar. They used the deep guttural growl of a bear, the hiss of a snake, and the powerful roar of a lion. These sounds were then layered together and manipulated to create something truly unique and fearsome. To make the roar even more unsettling, the team experimented with different animal frequencies, making sure the sound felt unnatural yet believable. The result was so convincing that during the recording process, even the cast members were startled by the sudden burst of the creature's roar. The realistic sound added an extra layer of terror to the basilisk's presence, making it one of the most memorable creatures in the film. Also, to add to that fact, Jason Isaacs did do the voice of the basilisk that Harry could hear through the walls. Just a fun fact in a video about fun facts. So we all know John Williams, right? The legendary composer behind the scores of both Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets and Star Wars. Just all of Star Wars, except for like a couple things. But specifically, Star Wars Attack of the Clones, and is known for his ability to craft iconic and unforgettable music themes. Turns out, he stole his own music. So during the Quidditch match in Chamber of Secrets, if you listen to it, it actually is very similar to the music he composed for Attack of the Clones during one of the car chase scenes. And it isn't just a coincidence. Williams brought his signature style and music and motifs to both franchises, creating pieces that felt epic and timeless. Because both films were scored by Williams, it makes sense that there would be some overlap between the two, particularly in a more action-packed sequence. This musical parallel is a fun Easter egg for fans of both franchises, showing how Williams' sound can transcend the magical world of Harry Potter and the galaxy far, far away. Chris Columbus, who directed the first movie and also the second movie, had the idea to take Chamber of Secrets in a darker direction. He knew that the sequel needed to stand out visually from the first film, to reflect a darker and more mature theme, which was beginning to emerge in the story. One of the most significant ways he achieved this was by instructing cinematographer Roger Pratt to change the lighting style. While Philosopher's Stone had a relatively bright and welcoming aesthetic to match the introductory tone of the series, Columbus wanted Chamber of Secrets to have a more mysterious and ominous feel, especially as the dangers surrounding the chamber itself began to unfold. The lighting was adjusted to be moodier, with deeper shadows and more contrast-heavy approach, creating a more suspenseful atmosphere throughout the film. The shift in tone was not only achieved through lighting, but also through the overall visual design, with a great emphasis on darker colors and textures in sets. The shift to more mature aesthetic wouldn't just define Chamber of Secrets, but also set the stage for the films that followed, creating a visual continuity that matched the increasingly perilous challenges the characters would face. And that's why if you've ever seen this is every scene from Harry Potter, look how bright it was in the beginning, look how dark, except for the one part after Harry dies, look at the brightness there. But I don't think that's truly accurate, but the point still stands. That's what happens. It gets darker and darker throughout the series. And then when Harry is in limbo, it's white. And then you have the end of the film, which is a little bit brighter too. When Jason Isaacs was first cast as Lucius Malfoy, his original character plan was to have short hair and wear a business suit. But Jason Isaacs had other plans as Lucius Malfoy. He was like, no, I look too much like a muggle. A muggle wouldn't have that haircut. A muggle wouldn't wear a suit. I understand I'm a rich businessman, but I would be more of a aristocrat who would wear long flowing robes and a cape and have long hair. And makes me look more drastically different than my son. So he went to production and said, this is what I want, wearing not really a wig and a curtain as a cape. And he said, this is how I want to look. That is how a muggle would look, that design. I want to look like a wizard. And so production agreed. They were like, yeah, that makes sense. Chris Columbus was like, do what you want. Looks good to me. So they all agreed. They said, that's a great idea. But there was one small problem. The long hair kept falling in Jason Isaacs' face. So to counter the falling in the face, Isaacs had to keep his head back to keep his hair back so it didn't fall in his face, which unintendedly had a fitting effect because it made Lucius even more haughty and arrogant. A small adjustment became the essential part of the character's physical presence, making Lucius seem even more condescending whenever he spoke down to someone. I look down my nose at you, sir. And in another scene of Jason Isaacs being pure magic in this movie, we get one of the final scenes of Chamber of Secrets. After Dobby is freed, furious Lucius Malfoy pulls his wand out and begins to cast a spell at Harry, starting with Avada, the beginning of the killing curse. Was he really about to kill Harry in the middle of Hogwarts? However, the moment wasn't in the script. Jason Isaacs was recently finished reading Goblet of Fire, and in the heat of the moment, he forgot what spell he was supposed to use, so he used the one spell that he could remember, which was Avada Kedavra. Since Goblet of Fire hadn't been adapted into film yet, audiences at the time wouldn't have realized how dark the implication was, but fans later understood that just how far Lucius would have gone just because he was mad that he didn't have Dobby. The small improvisation added an extra layer of menace to Lucius's character, showing just how furious and dangerous he could be when he lost his composure. The Harry Potter films are filled with small details and Easter eggs that only the most observant fans will notice, and in Chamber of Secrets, it is not an exception. One of these hidden details can be found in Nocturne Alley, when Hagrid rescues Harry from Borgin and Burke's. As they walk out of the shop, hardcover editions of the Harry Potter books can briefly be seen on the shelf in the background. This is a clever meta-reference, subtly acknowledging the books that inspired the films within the Wizarding world itself. It's unknown whether this was an intentional Easter egg placed by the set designers or just a fun coincidence, but either way, it's a blink and you'll miss it detail that dedicated fans love spotting when rewatching the films. Out of all of the sets created for Chamber of Secrets, none were as elaborate or as costly as Dumbledore's office. Dumbledore likes nice things. We know this. We saw his purple suit. We saw him in Fantastic Beasts and how many suits he had. It was designed to reflect the wisdom and history of Hogwarts' greatest headmaster. The set was filled with intricate details, including massive stone columns, towering bookshelves packed with ancient tomes, and an array of mysterious artifacts. Such as silver instruments and an enormous telescope, the level of detail made the office feel like a place of great knowledge and magical secrets, perfectly fitting for a character as enigmatic as Dumbledore. However, due to the complexity of the design, the set was incredibly expensive to build. The producers were initially hesitant to approve the budget for it. They questioned whether such an elaborate setting was necessary for just a few key scenes. but director Chris Columbus insisted that Dumbledore's office needed to be as grand and awe-inspiring as possible. In the end, the set became one of the most visually stunning locations in the entire series, and it would go on to be reused in later films, making it worthwhile investment. In the book version of Chamber of Secrets, there's a subplot where Harry discovers that all the roosters in Hogwarts have been mysteriously killed. This is an important detail because according to wizarding folklore, a basilisk can be killed instantly by the crowing of a rooster. The film originally included a small reference to this, as there was a deleted scene where Hagrid is shown carrying a dead rooster while heading towards Dumbledore's office. This moment would have subtly hinted at the basilisk's presence in the castle, but it was ultimately cut from the final film. Despite its removal, keen-eyed fans who read the books noticed the missing detail and wished it had been kept in to maintain the foreshadowing. When Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets was released on DVD in the UK, it shattered records almost instantly. Within its first weekend alone, the film sold over 1 million copies, making it one of the fastest DVD sales of all time. DVDs are those discs that movies used to come on before they were put on HBO Max. This was a huge milestone for home entertainment, as DVDs were still relatively new and a growing media in the early 2000s, because at that time we still had VHS. Those are the tapes that look like giant cassette tapes. That's where like film would go from one side to the other and it would magically like project on a TV. Then they changed it to these magical discs that lasers hit it and it tells you the same data. Crazy technology at the time. But this sold both VHS and DVD because I remember getting both VHS and DVD. So I contributed to these sales as a kid. The massive success of Chamber of Secrets on DVD reflected just how popular the Harry Potter franchise had become worldwide. Fans were eager to own the movie and rewatch it at home, further cementing the series as a cultural phenomenon, and probably also helping cement DVDs as a replacement for VHS. One of the more comedic moments in the film appears when Crabbe and Goyle unknowingly eat drugged cupcakes, because Hermione is a sociopath and not only holds reporters hostage for at least a week in a jar, but also drugs 12-year-olds. The cupcakes knock them out so that Harry and Ron can steal their identities using polyjuice. However, filming the scene wasn't as fun for the actors who played Crabbe and Goyle. The cupcakes were suspended from a thin, nearly invisible fishing line to make them appear as though they were floating in midair, because they did a lot of practical effects and not CGI. It's funny how good movies don't use as much CGI. That's a conversation for another time, though. But what the actors Jamie Waylett and Josh Herdman didn't realize was that there were hooks securing the cupcakes to the fishing line, which were sharp. As they took bites out of the cupcakes, they accidentally cut the inside of their mouth on the hooks. It was a small but painful reminder that even the simplest scenes can sometimes be unexpectedly difficult to film. At the time Chamber of Secrets was filmed, no one, including the filmmakers, knew that the chamber itself would play an important role in the future of the movies. Once production wrapped, the entire Chamber of Secrets set was dismantled and stored away, as there were no plans to revisit it. However, years later, when Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 was being made, the filmmakers realized they needed to return to the chamber for a crucial scene involving Ron and Hermione destroying a Horcrux. In the books, it's off-scene, but in the movies, they showed it. Since the original set no longer existed, they had to rebuild the entire thing from scratch, carefully matching it to its original design from the Chamber of Secrets. This unexpected reconstruction is one of the rare instances when the Harry Potter production team had to recreate a major set rather than simply repurpose or reuse it. It's also a testament to just how much thought went into maintaining visuals. It is also a testament to just how much thought went into maintaining visual continuity across the films. And there you have it. 27 amazing facts and one sneaky fake fact about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. How many did you know? Do you know them all? Do you know which one's fake? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this magical journey through the wizarding world, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, so you can see more Marvelous Marauders content. Ring that bell so that it'll notify you when I do post. And don't miss out on any of our next adventures. Thanks for watching, and as always, Nox. Good news! I have merch now. This is a good representation of the merch that I have, but this is a prototype. But if you check the link in the description, and I will have a link somewhere on the screen showing off the merch that we have. Perfect for a gift for people who like this channel, but Make sure to check it out, like and subscribe, and let's get back to the videos. Prisoner of Azkaban is probably one of my favorite movies. There's so much to it. The artistry of the movie changed so much between Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban. I also am a sucker for time travel movies, but I think a lot of people will always say Prisoner of Azkaban is probably their favorite of all 7 Harry Potter installments, with Half-Blood Prince probably being a close second. It's the universal lore of learning about the Marauders or learning about Voldemort that makes those 2 books the best. But today we are talking about Prisoner of Azkaban. I have 28 fun facts for you. Well, 27. One of them's fake, but only the truest of Harry Potter nerds will probably know the fake one. So, without further ado, let's get started and see what all you know and don't know about Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. So let's start with fun fact number 1. Did you know that Buckbeak was actually the first character to do something unspeakable on camera in history? It's not really unspeakable. Buckbeak was actually the first CGI creature. Actually, I think the first CGI anything to poop on screen. Animators actually animated Buckbeak to poop on screen to make it seem more realistic. Because if you just had a horse bird sitting in the back, that's no fun. But if you have it poop, not only does it make little kids laugh, but then you're like, wait, is it real? It's not. It's all an illusion. But that's what's so great about this series, is they look into the tiniest details to try to make it seem more realistic. Did you know Buckbeak was not the only animal on set to relieve itself? In reality, Scabbers, the rat, actually kept peeing on Ron's hand in the scenes that he was holding him, which, unfortunately, it wasn't a CGI rat. It was a real rat, so Rupert Grint had to deal with rat pee covered hands. No wonder Hermione didn't want to hug him in the last movie, but it's just a kind of a funny fun fact. That's why it's called a fun fact, guys. But Rupert Grint was a trooper and continued to act even as the pee dribbled on his hand. So after the second movie, the director Chris Columbus decided this project was going to take too much of his life, and he really wanted to spend time with his daughter. You probably would have seen her. She's Susan Bones. So she didn't have any speaking lines, but he wanted to spend more time not only with his daughter, but his other children and his wife. So he decided to step down as director. Well, they needed to find a new director, and that director was Alfonso Cuarón. He was hesitant at first because he didn't want to have to deal with children or child actors. He was like, I don't know if I can get what I want out of them. I don't think this movie will do what I want, because he had never read the books before. But he got a call from his friend Guillermo del Toro, who called him up and said, dude, take this. It'll be great. You can bring so much to this role. And that's what he did. He followed in the footsteps of Chris Columbus, who, with the second movie, started to make the movie a little bit darker. This movie, he set the standard that would then follow with the rest of the directors who take over. He wanted to make it a darker movie. He wanted to make it seem like a mystery, which is what the series is. When Alfonso Cuarón came onto the set, he wanted to see who these characters were, because like I said in the last fun fact, he wasn't sure if he wanted to work on this movie because he wasn't sure about children actors. So he had the 3 main stars write a paper. Just write a paper about who your character is. Emma Watson, as Hermione, wrote a huge, detailed paper about who Hermione Granger was and how it affected her. Harry, he did about a page, 2 pages. I like Harry Potter because he looks like me. Good job, Daniel Radcliffe. And then Rupert Grint didn't even do the paper. Never turned it in. Just completely blew it off. Probably even tried to see if he could copy Daniel's work, because that's what Ron would do. And honestly, it sums up their character. They knew their character. Ron would have never turned in that paper, and if he did, he would have copied Harry. Harry would have done enough to get by, and Hermione, of course, would have gone above and beyond and wrote a 10-page dissertation about why Hermione is important as a role for women. With Alfonso Cuarón being as artistic as he is, he wanted to bring a more scenic adventure to the series. So when they first started filming, they actually ended up going to Scotland and living there for a couple weeks to try to get as many shots of the scenic Scotland to bring the movie into a more realistic area on the coast side of it. And just, we see more of the exterior of Hogwarts in this than we've seen in the first two movies combined. We get a more visual layout of Hogwarts because of the art style that the director wanted. Talking about art imitating life, we get to the Dementors. The Dementors are probably one of the scariest creatures in the Harry Potter universe, at least in the UK. The hide behind in America kind of freaks me out a little bit. But the Dementors are the manifestation of the author's depression. And it really kind of works. Like, it's not just the author's depression, it was just the experience that the author had with depression. And of course, most people relate to how the Dementors make you feel and depression. But apparently the cure for that is just chocolate and maybe a good therapist. But art imitates life in the fact that the Dementors are just a manifestation of depression, which makes them so much darker. Harry Melling, who played Dudley Dursley, was almost recast in the third movie because when he hit puberty, he had a glow up. He wasn't the chubby, piggy little boy that he was in the first movie or even the second movie. He lost a ton of weight. Good for him. If you've seen pictures of him now, he had a glow up like Matthew Lewis did. But he almost had to be recast because he lost so much weight. But in the end, they decided to allow him to wear a fat suit and prosthetics to keep him in the movie, at least for Prisoner. Designing CGI animals is probably one of the more difficult things, especially when they're mythical, because you've got to figure out how they move. And for Buckbeak, it was kind of a difficult thing to figure out because they weren't sure how they wanted to capture his movements. He's half bird, half horse, but how does he move? Does he move a little bit more skittishly like a bird does, like a little bit hoppy? Or does he walk majestically like a horse? Well, originally, when they started doing it, he was going to be more puppy-like, which I'm not sure how that would have worked with a giant eagle horse creature. I guess it would have been a lot like Toothless and How to Train Your Dragon, but luckily this didn't happen because I think it would have not worked very well. I think the more majestic walking style, more like a horse, is a little bit more intimidating and makes him seem more mythical than if he acted like a puppy. There are scenes in the third movie that the author stated gave her chills because they foreshadowed things that were yet to come. She never explicitly says what those things are, and there are a lot of speculation on what moments may or may not be the foreshadowing that were unintentionally pulled from the books or added into the movie that weren't even in the books, that weren't even known about until she had written them into the next books. Because when the third movie came out, they were only on the fifth book. But unfortunately, we do not know what those moments are, but I would love to have a discussion on what we think they might be. So leave a comment down below on what you think those moments that foreshadowed future events that were not in the books are. So Mina Lima, the group that made all of the props in the Harry Potter movies, they liked to add super detailed messages. One of the things that really stands out is Sirius Black's poster. Has a bunch of random letters of script, some sort of other language, runes, things like that, but they've been translated. And the main rune that is on the poster translates to more or less human, which kind of puts a dark commentary on the Harry Potter series as a whole, especially with recent events that we won't talk about, but just how the wizards as a whole treat people and creatures, more or less human. They're not important because they're not us, is almost what it says. He is a monster, not a human. You know the triple-decker purple bus that's able to weave in and out of traffic and drive very, very fast? Well, it actually didn't drive that fast. They actually had to film it in slow-mo and then speed it up so they could make it look like it was going super fast. And then you're probably wondering, why did they have to film it in slow-mo? The night bus had to drive super slow because it was so tall. It was so tall that they had to load the bottom floor full of rocks during filming to make sure that it wouldn't flip over, whether it be from wind or just a turn, because it was so tall, it was very top heavy. So they had to put 4 tons of weight at the bottom of the night bus to make sure that it did not flip over. You know Sirius Black, the father figure that Harry didn't really get to connect with fully. Well, not only was Sirius Black Harry's mentor, but the actor who played Sirius Black, Gary Oldman, was Daniel Radcliffe's mentor. Daniel Radcliffe idolized Gary Oldman as an actor, was looking forward to being able to act alongside Gary Oldman. He was so excited. But not only did they get to work together as mentor-mentee in the movie, but on set, when they weren't filming, Gary Oldman was also teaching Daniel Radcliffe how to play bass guitar, which I feel like if Sirius was a muggle, he would also teach Harry how to play bass guitar, which is pretty cool. In Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry never cast a spell. In Prisoner of Azkaban, we never actually see Azkaban, ever. It is brought up so many times, but we never get to see it, ever, which is quite unfortunate. The first time we actually get to see inside of Azkaban, Hogwarts Legacy. We hear about it, we hear how horrible it is, but we don't get to see the inside until Hogwarts Legacy. Maybe in some flashbacks, whether it be in the 3rd or the 4th season of the Harry Potter reboot series, maybe we'll see inside of Azkaban from Sirius' point of view or Barty Crouch Jr.'s. But in the Prisoner of Azkaban movie, we do not see Azkaban. Although Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them was not even thought about as a movie concept back when Prisoner of Azkaban came out, there was a small Easter egg that was placed on the Marauders map when shown to Harry from Fred and George, with Newt Scamander walking through the halls. It may have been an unintentional Easter egg of just, hey, let's pick names that we've heard in the series. Newt Scamander's one of them. Let's put it in there. Nobody's going to question it. What kind of people do you think we are? Of course we're going to question it. Why is Newt Scamander at Hogwarts? Maybe to have a conversation about how to get Buckbeak off from being tried. Or what can we do to control these Dementors? Who knows? What we do know now is that Newt Scamander and Albus Dumbledore were close friends. But it's a fun little Easter egg that's hidden in there. Blink and you'll miss it moment. Professor R.J. Lupin, who was endearingly played by David Thewlis, was not originally going to be played by David Thewlis. Originally, David Thewlis tried out for Professor Quirrell. Well, I'm glad he didn't get it because I think he brought so much life to the Professor Lupin role. And when I read the books, he is who I picture. Hopefully, whoever they cast as Professor Lupin in the reboot series will be able to fill such big shoes. So one of the major plot points in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is Harry's broom is destroyed. The Nimbus 2000 is destroyed. We do see that in the movie. But part of the plot line is Harry needs a new broom, and he gets it. But in the book, he gets it for Christmas. In the movie, he gets it in the final scene. It's a drastic difference, but I think there was so much that had to be fit within the movie that they cut that storyline, but they needed to explain his new broom because it is so important to the next movie that he has a broom, specifically a firebolt. One of everybody's favorite moments in the Harry Potter and Prisoner of Azkaban is when Emma Watson punches Draco Malfoy right square in the nose. It was such a big moment that in the premiere, everybody stood up and cheered. But it wasn't always supposed to be a punch. Those who have read the book will know it was a slap that was supposed to happen. But Emma Watson thought it would be better if she just punched him. But one thing that we all know is I'm sure Lucius Malfoy probably heard about it. Or maybe he didn't, because I'm pretty sure Lucius would have been like, excuse me, you let a mudblood not only touch you, but hit you? You disgust me. So you know the scene where the Dementors come in and they're about to take the soul from both Sirius and Harry? Well, you know how Harry starts to pass out? That was actually real. That moment was so timing heavy and intense that Daniel Radcliffe wasn't breathing the way he needed to breathe and ended up hyperventilating and almost passing out. Not acting like he was passing out, but kind of captures the realism of the stress that he was feeling in the moment of, oh, these Dementors are attacking me. So I think it kind of works. I don't know how much of that they left in the final scene, but they've kept other things in different movies that were the actor in actual peril or pain that they kept because it was so good for film. Looking at you, Lord of the Rings fans, we all know that when he kicked the helmet, he broke his foot and then hiked to the next site of filming. You don't have to tell us every time we watch the movie. And talking about commitment to the art of film, David Thewlis, when becoming the werewolf Lupin, had to sit in makeup for 6 whole hours to be put in the prosthetics to make him a werewolf. Multiple days. 6 hours. That's rough, but it paid off. So when you watch that scene, it wasn't just all CGI. There were some practical effects for the transformation. The full werewolf, yes, that's CGI, but the transformation took hours to do. So appreciate it. Life on set of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban was not just serious, dark, scary moments. There were some lighthearted moments. Michael Gambon, who did replace Richard Harris after his tragic passing before filming started of Prisoner of Azkaban, was good with working with kids. Well, it got around that Daniel Radcliffe had a crush on one of the extras that was playing in the scene where they're all in the Great Hall together. So he asked if he could have his sleeping bag near her, so I guess in between scenes, he could talk to her. Michael Gambon got word of that and slipped a fart machine in the sleeping bag that he was laying in. And while presenting his lines with Alan Rickman, would occasionally just push the fart buttons to make fart noises come out of Daniel Radcliffe's sleeping bag. There's a deleted scene that is in special features for the movie, so if you're able to get a hold of that, go and watch it. It's hilarious. I think it's also on this platform. But the entire time that he's pushing this button, he's giving his speech and isn't breaking. Neither is Alan Rickman, which is a testament to their professionality. But everybody else is losing their crap, especially Harry, since he's got the fart machine. But it's good to see that they were having fun on set. Not only did Harry Melling have a grow up in between Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban, but so did Matthew Lewis. Matthew Lewis finally grew into his teeth and started to thin out. He couldn't have been the round-faced boy, Neville Longbottom, with the bad teeth. His teeth starting to fit his mouth, so he ended up having to wear fake teeth and also wore a couple of prosthetics. As the movie went on, he had to continue to wear that until finally, in Deathly Hallows, he was able to lose all that and become the hero that he's meant to be. But that's the problem with starring child actors, is sometimes they don't grow up to what you expect them to be. Sometimes they grow up to be stone cold hotties. So we already talked about Richard Harris's passing and how Michael Gambon took over. But there was a point in between Richard Harris and Michael Gambon that Ian McKellen almost became the next Dumbledore. Ian McKellen was originally asked to become Dumbledore before Richard Harris was, but turned it down because he was busy filming Fellowship of the Rings and Two Towers, because that was around the time. They were all filmed back to back. More Lord of the Rings fun facts. But by the time Prisoner of Azkaban came around, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King had finished filming. So Ian McKellen was done filming Lord of the Rings and was able, if he wanted to become Dumbledore. But he turned it down for 2 reasons. Number 1, he said, I've already played an old white-bearded wizard. I don't need to be another one. But the other reason he turned it down was because at one point Richard Harris had insulted his acting. So he didn't feel that it was prudent for him to take over his role because Richard Harris would not have approved, which is fine. I think it would have been very confusing. So is that Gandalf or is that Dumbledore? No, it's both. He's both. Talking about certain people replacing other people, we talked about Chris Columbus having stepped down after the second movie and someone else had to take place as director. Well, Gilderoy Lockhart himself almost became the director for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. He lost his memory and decided to become a Muggle director. No, Kenneth Branagh, who has done a lot of directing, such as all of the Agatha Christie, Death on the Nile, Haunting in Venice, Murder on the Orient Express. He directed as well as starred in those movies. And he also did the original Thor movie in Phase 1 of the MCU. But he almost took the job to become the director of Prisoner of Azkaban. but turned it down because he wanted to do different projects. So you know that scene where Sirius comes out and drags Ron into the Whomping Willow? Well, Rupert Grint was wearing a harness and wasn't being dragged by a dog, but of course. But he was being dragged by a stuntman acting like a dog, pulling him with the harness, which is just kind of funny. So next time you watch that scene where he's getting pulled by Sirius Black, just picture him being pulled by a man, which in reality, he actually was being pulled by a man. Talk about realism. So while we're on the topic of the Whomping Willow, the Whomping Willow was completely CGI and motorized robotic arms. But originally, it was going to just be a puppet. Miniature puppet that they just, woo, like that. But they couldn't capture the proper movements, so then they eventually used more robotic arms and a lot of CGI to make it look more realistic in the end. So, the title, Prisoner of Azkaban. The prison of Azkaban. Talking about Azkaban. The word Azkaban is actually a derivation and combination of the words Alcatraz and Abaddon. Alcatraz being one of the most notorious prisons in America that was almost inescapable. I think in history there was only one group of people who was able to escape, and they're not even sure if they survived. But it was a prison on an island surrounded by rough waters, like Azkaban. Abaddon is an area in hell where people are tortured. If you watch Supernatural, Abaddon is also one of like the worst demons. But it's an area in hell where people are tortured. So Azkaban, an island surrounded by rough waters with a prison on it, tortured by demons. Dementors, Azkaban, Alcatraz, Abaddon, Azkaban. All fits together. A nice puzzle. So just the worst things of the worst all become Azkaban. We've talked about Buckbeak twice, but we're going to circle back to the original scene of Buckbeak. Because originally, Buckbeak was being filmed as a horse. I know the idea of how Buckbeak was going to be animated was that it was going to be animated like a puppy, but they scrapped that idea and brought in a horse. They were going to use the horse and just CGI over the horse feathers. But unfortunately, the horse was not very cooperative, so eventually, after like a scene of using the horse, they ended up just switching it to a stick, which was more cooperative, and then fully CGI'd the hippogriff. So that is all 28. Are you as tired as I am? Because that was a lot of fun facts. Do you know which one was fake? Honestly, I don't remember which one is fake. I do, but let me know in the comments which one was the fake one. Unfortunately, there's no prize, but I will give your house 10 points if you can guess which fun fact is fake. So just leave it in the comments, and I will comment how many points your house gets if you get it right. So without further ado, we will see you in the next video. And as always, stay marvelous. Nox. Did you know the basilisk actually makes an appearance in the Goblet of Fire movie? Or did you know one of the sets of twins that we see in the movies aren't actually related at all? Today we're going to talk about 30 different fun facts within Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire that you may not know. So I'm sure one of you is going to be like, I know every single one of these, and that's awesome. But there were some in here that I didn't even know, and I do research on fun facts for videos. So the fact that there were some that I had never heard of before was cool. I'm glad to find things that I don't know. So make sure to stick around. You might find something that you actually didn't know. You know the basilisk, you know, the giant snake that lived in a secret cavern beneath the school. Yeah, it's in the 4th movie. You probably never even knew this, but the animatronic that they used for the basilisk in the 2nd movie to make it more realistic was repurposed and was used for the fire-breathing dragon scenes when Hagrid shows Harry what is in the first task. I would have never noticed because it's dark, so of course you're not going to really be like, oh, yeah, is that the basilisk? Of course you're not going to notice. But they did reuse the basilisk. At least they saved something from that because they had to rebuild the set for Chamber of Secrets in the later movies. Remember Alfonso Cuarón, the director of Prisoner of Azkaban? Well, he was asked to come back to direct Goblet of Fire. And he was all for it. He was like, yeah, that sounds great, but I gotta finish the movie I'm doing right now. And of course, Warner Brothers was like, nah, we gotta get this movie out. Like, you know, we are on a time schedule. These kids aren't gonna get any younger. And so he had to step back, and a new director took his place. Director Mike Newell. Mike Newell, the director of Goblet of Fire, was paid significantly less than the previous director, Chris Columbus, on the set of Harry Potter as director, where Chris Columbus was paid $10 million per movie as well as getting a percentage of the box office revenue, Mike Newell only got $1 million. There are many reasons behind this. Chris Columbus was a larger director, more well-known, needed to get the franchise off the ground. Mike Newell, not as much, but also they had to start paying the actors a little bit more. So, the budget had to come out of somebody's pocket. Draco Malfoy wasn't the highest paid actor on that set based on his time for no reason. Warner Brothers Studios actually wanted Goblet of Fire to be in 2 parts. I agree with them. Granted, they probably wanted it for, hey, more box office revenue, but Alfonso Cuarón, the director of Prisoner of Azkaban, talked Mike Newell, the director of Goblet of Fire, into telling the studios that it should only be 1 part, which probably was a good idea for Mike Newell since this was the only movie he directed, but also not a great idea for the movie because there were so many cuts that were made in this movie. On the set of Goblet of Fire, Mike Newell did have a couple problems. One of them being that he may have accidentally insulted Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman wore colored contacts as Snape, and Mike Newell on the first day on set looked at him and said, "I love the shade of your eyes. That's so cool." And Alan Rickman reached up to his eye and took out his contact and said, "Thanks." So good start on you, Mike Newell. It's probably a good thing that you didn't split the movie into 2 parts. Since most of the cast of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire were younger, Mike Newell was trying to make a connection with them, but it really never stuck. They always liked to call him Sir, and he didn't like being called Sir. So to try to break that tension between them, he started a fake fight with one of the Weasley twins, also to help them practice with their fight scene that they had in the middle of the movie, but it got a little out of hand and Mike Newell broke a rib cast, but I think he might have gained some respect from the younger cast. The director of Goblet of Fire wasn't the only one who felt as though he wasn't getting paid enough. The Dursleys also thought they should have been paid a little bit more. So when they went to the studio to ask for more money, of course the studio obliged and cut them fully out of the movie. So you went from some money to no money because you were greedy, which kind of suits the Dursleys a little bit. We want more money. No. Another actor who was cut from Goblet of Fire was Percy Weasley, played by Chris Rankin. But unlike the Dursleys, he wasn't cut because he wanted more money. He was cut because of his contract. So Percy Weasley, or Chris Rankin, was only contracted for 4 movies. And so he had to make a decision, since he had already been in the first 3 movies, he had to make a decision on whether he wanted to be in the 4th movie or the 5th movie. Ultimately, he decided to be in the 5th movie because he felt that that part was much bigger than the part that they were giving him in Goblet of Fire. And the way that they treated Barty Crouch and Barty Crouch Jr.'s storyline in the 4th movie, it was probably a better choice for Percy to be in the 5th, which was still a relatively small role compared to how he is in the books. Mike Newell, the director of Goblet of Fire, really wanted to give the movie a new feel. And of course, Alfonso Cuarón kind of set up this whole idea of it getting darker and darker with each movie. And so Mike Newell tried to stick with that, but also wanted to give it a Bollywood feel. Granted, we didn't have any musical dance numbers, which is kind of unfortunate. We did have a small one during the Yule Ball, but it's not the same as the fun, colorful, festive Bollywood dance numbers that are in Bollywood movies. But his influence of Bollywood did kind of show up throughout the movie with the use of bright, vibrant colors contrasting against the dark, brooding background that was Goblet of Fire. And on the topic of dance numbers, the dance numbers that we do get in Goblet of Fire, which is the main champion's dance, everybody else had about 3 weeks to learn that dance except for Daniel Radcliffe because he was busy filming the movie. He only had about 4 days, and it kind of helped for the ultimate ending of that scene where he doesn't know what's going on and everybody else seems to know how to dance properly. So it kind of works really well that he legitimately didn't know how to do the dance as well as everybody else. And that's part of the reason why you never see Daniel Radcliffe's legs in that scene, because he didn't know the steps very well. When Harry goes to the Yule Ball, we all know his date are the Patil twins. Him and Ron go with the Patils. But are they actually twins? Because they're not actually related whatsoever. They are just 2 girls that look very similar, but are not related whatsoever. It's kind of like Fred and George Weasley. They met at auditions. That's a joke that they played in an interview that somebody actually fell for, but the Patil twins actually weren't related at all. Kind of a good find, because I would have believed it if you told me they were related. Harry wanted to go to the Yule Ball with Cho Chang, but Cho Chang may not have been the Cho Chang that we thought that she was going to be. Katie Long actually wasn't planning on auditioning for Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. She was actually on a shopping trip when her father called her and said, "Hey, they're doing auditions in the area that you're at. You should go try out and see if you can get a part." And lo and behold, she did become Cho Chang but only by happenstance. She wasn't planning on being Cho Chang, just like she wasn't planning on going to the Yule Ball with Harry. So in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, during the Yule Ball scene, the band that is playing throughout the Yule Ball is the Weird Sisters. Well, since the Weird Sisters don't actually exist, the filmmakers had to find a good replacement. So what better to replace the Weird Sisters than famous British band Pulp and Radiohead? So from Pulp, you had Jarvis Cocker, and from Radiohead, you had Johnny Greenwood and Phil Selway. So it may not have been the Weird Sisters, but it was a good combination of good bands. The lead costume designer of Goblet of Fire, Janie Tamaim, really wanted Hermione to have her Cinderella moment. As she comes down the stairs, she wanted just that perfect princess moment for Emma Watson to happen. And of course, it did happen, but it took many different dresses to get to that point. So many different changes, because those of us who read the book know that the dress was supposed to be powder blue. Ultimately, it was a pink peachy color. But the costume designer wanted to make sure that the color didn't wash out Emma Watson's skin tone. So of course, the color did have to change to make sure that it worked well with Emma Watson. Although Emma Watson did get her Cinderella moment during the Yule Ball scene though, it wasn't perfectly filmed at first. The first time that she went down the stairs in her Yule Ball gown, she actually ended up tripping and falling down the stairs, which is unfortunate, but at least she was all right and she was fine to go down the stairs afterward. But at least Emma Watson did get her princess moment during that film, and then eventually got another princess moment because she is, in fact, a Disney princess. Now, while we're on the topic of Hermione, during the Yule Ball scene in the book, there's a small conversation between Hermione and Victor Crumb about how to pronounce her name. It was speculated for years that this was put in by the author to help the readers pronounce Hermione's name right, because I know it may just be me, but I always pronounced her Hermione, and I always knew that was wrong, but it was the easiest way for me to get through without trying to stumble through the name and change it every time, so I called her Hermione, until we get to Goblet of Fire, where she breaks down the pronunciations to Hermione, and then from then on, readers were able to pronounce her name properly. Of course, this scene's not in the movie, because we've heard her name many times being screamed by Harry and Ron for 3 movies before this. It was then later confirmed by J.K. Rowling that that is exactly what she meant to do by that little section in there, was to help readers of a younger age be able to pronounce a very difficult name. On the topic of pronunciation, if you had actually listened to the book instead of read the book, you would have never had a problem with how to pronounce Hermione's name, because Jim Dale read the book phenomenally. He did it so well that he actually broke a record on how many different voices he did during the recording of Goblet of Fire. There are so many different characters within that book, and every single one of those characters had a different voice, which is a huge deal because he was able to do a different voice for so many different characters that most people usually mess up and do the same voice for like half the characters. It's a testament to Jim Dale's talent that he was actually able to do that in the book. I'm partial to Jim Dale reading the audiobook. I do enjoy Stephen Fry occasionally, but my main listen will always be Jim Dale reading Harry Potter. The first and third task of the Triwizard Tournament are the more memorable tasks within the movie of Goblet of Fire. But the second task was one of the harder ones to film because it had to be filmed underwater. And it wasn't just a quick, hey, let's just jump in the water today and film. Daniel Radcliffe spent 41 total hours filming underwater for the second task scene. Ultimately, he ended up with 2 ear infections, and most days only got like 7 to 8 seconds of usable footage. But in the end, it really kind of worked out to look great as a scene for a movie. Being that the second task was such an undertaking to film, they had to build a 500,000 liter tank to be able to build the set for the second task. It's one of the largest underwater sets to be built beside James Cameron's 26 million liter tank that he used for The Abyss. But The Abyss had its own problems when it came to filming, and I think the 500,000 liter tank was big enough. Being underwater has a lot of safety concerns, especially when you have to dive pretty deep into the bottom of the tank to be able to film. They did have breathing apparatuses just off camera to allow the actors to be able to stay underwater for longer periods of time and allow them to stay in that spot between scenes. But there were signals that Daniel Radcliffe was supposed to give if he was okay. And at one point, he didn't give the signal to say that he was okay, which activated the dive team to have to dive down and pull him out of the water and basically disrupt filming for the rest of that day because, oh, well, you took him out of position. Now we've got to refilm the whole thing. No wonder it took 41 hours to film. While we're on the topic of the second task, Harry got the gillyweed in both the movie and the book to allow him to swim underwater. But in the movie, it was given to him by Neville Longbottom. In the book, it was given to him by Dobby. But unfortunately, Dobby and the entire house elf plot from Goblet of Fire had to be removed from the movie to save time. The movie was already long enough and a little bit high in budget. So of course, multiple CGI characters, which would have been involved if you did the house elf storyline, would have made it even more expensive and taken up a lot more time to be able to film as well as edit. But if you watch carefully within Goblet of Fire during the Quidditch World Cup scene before, when they're at the campsite, you'll see a llama. And on that llama, you'll see two house elves. Coincidentally, both of those house elves kind of fit the description of both Dobby and Winky, the two main house elves within the story of Goblet of Fire. So at least they did a subtle nod to, hey, we see you, book readers, but unfortunately we're not going to continue the story in the movie series. Other major changes within Goblet of Fire another major change within Goblet of Fire is Voldemort. Within the books, he's described to have red eyes that are more slit-like, reminiscent to a snake or a serpent. But Ralph Fiennes, the actor who played Voldemort, went to the filmmakers and said, I don't like this. I can't really emote and show my emotion when I'm covered with so much prosthetics. Can you leave my eyes open and allow me to be able to emote using my eyes? And the filmmakers were like, yeah, let's see how that works. And of course, it ended up staying in. And I think Ralph Fiennes did a great job as being a creepy Voldemort. He's got big shoes to fill, that's for sure. Not that he wore shoes, but you know what I mean. The set of Dumbledore's office we already know is an extremely expensive set. It was one of the most expensive sets that was built for Prisoner of Azkaban. So one of the things they did to save a little bit of money was instead of buying a bunch of old giant leather bound books, is they used phone books and then just glued bindings on the back of them to make them look like old leather bound books. Because you don't need to see the books. Harry never takes the books out, neither does Dumbledore. So it's not a big deal to use giant phone books all over the room to represent old tomes. And if they saved so much money using phone books, what did they use all the money for in Dumbledore's office set? The Icelandic nation had a good laugh when watching Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire because one of the characters, specifically Rita Skeeter, her last name meant shit. Specifically, the word skita means shit in the Icelandic language. And if a British person says Rita Skeeter, it sounds like Rita Skeeta, which sounds like the Icelandic word for shit, which is fitting for Rita Skeeter because she kind of is. As with most books, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire wasn't originally going to be called Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. It went through many name changes, one of them being Harry Potter and the Triwizard Tournament. But the author thought that that's a little too on the nose on what is going to happen in the book. So instead, she decided to change it to Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire so that it was a little bit more mysterious, which I think worked. I didn't when I first opened that book. I was like, ooh, what is the Goblet of Fire? You had the Sorcerer's Stone, the Chamber of Secrets, the Prisoner of Azkaban. Now you have the Goblet of Fire. It's going to be a big MacGuffin throughout the book. Nope, it's actually just in like the 6th chapter of the book. Oh, okay, cool. Goblet of Fire director Mike Newell really wanted the Dark Mark to be vicious looking. He wanted it to stand out and just look almost painful for the Death Eaters. So what he imagined the Dark Mark doing is when it showed up on the Death Eater skin, it kind of bubbled out of their skin, which took a lot of work to make practically work. And the makeup artists were able to do it by darkening the Dark Mark in multiple stages. And then eventually they had to use CGI to make the snake move out of the skull because they can't do that practically. And it did really well to make it look painful to have a dark mark. And because Goblet of Fire was so dark compared to the previous movies, this is the first movie in the series to go from a PG rating to a PG-13 rating. But it wasn't just because it was a darker movie. They wanted it to be less of a kid's movie and grow with the audience. Because, of course, the audience that grew up with Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets is now a lot older by the time the fourth movie came around. So, of course, they need it to be a little bit more adult. The audience of the Harry Potter series was not the only group that was aging before people's eyes. Actor Daniel Radcliffe actually just changed drastically between the beginning of filming and the end of filming of Goblet of Fire. The director Mike Newell said from when he was editing, there would be scenes where he would see the young Daniel Radcliffe who looked like the Harry Potter from the first three movies. And then there were other scenes where he was almost unrecognizable as that same child because he looked like an adult. But that's what happens when you film children. They change drastically. Michael Gambon, who played Albus Dumbledore from Prisoner of Azkaban on, used to wear his street clothes underneath his robes. And not only that, he used to keep a pack of smokes in his sock, so in between scenes, he could take a smoke break. Well, maybe that's why he yelled at Harry about putting his name in the Goblet of Fire. He just needed a smoke. Maybe give him a smoke and let's retry that scene. Because we don't need to yell at Harry. Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire? That's all you have to do. That's all you have to do. All right, that is all of the facts for today. Did you know every single one of them? Because I know there were a couple that when I did research for this, I had never seen before, and I was excited to learn some new stuff about behind the scenes of the Harry Potter series. So hopefully you enjoy that too, and if you do, make sure to like and subscribe so you can get more Harry Potter behind the scenes and discussions that I'll be posting here weekly. So without further ado, stay marvelous, Nox. Did you know Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is the longest book in the Harry Potter book series? I mean, of course you did. Look how thick this is. This is the paperback book. But compared to Chamber of Secrets, this is twice as thick. But that's not the fun fact that we're talking about. The fun fact is that Order of the Phoenix is the shortest movie in the Harry Potter movie series. And I showed you Chamber of Secrets to show that it's half the size, less than half the size, because that's the longest movie in the Harry Potter series. That is just one of many Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix fun facts that we are going to be talking about today. So stick around because there are way more fun facts that we need to talk about. So if you like what you're watching, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's get started with more. Did you know that Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix was the first movie to not have any interior location sets? All sets were built on a soundstage and used instead of old British castles and cathedrals. Exterior shots were filmed in different locations, but interior shots specifically were all either handmade sets or CGI, which makes sense because trying to film within these British cathedrals and castles probably got very expensive. The second movie had to build an entire Privet Drive set because the citizens on the street that Privet Drive was filmed wanted more money for the second film because the first film did so well. One of the most expensive sets that the filmmakers had to build for Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is the hallway shot in the Ministry of Magic, the one that Harry dreams about throughout the movie series. That set was the most expensive set for the entire movie, probably because they already had Dumbledore's office, but it's mostly because it's a 200-foot long hallway that they had to use. And they did multiple shots within that set, so they had to make sure that it was perfect. So those fans of Harry Potter who have been to the Ministry of Magic within Epic Universe know how many tiles are within the waiting line for Battle at the Ministry. 125,000, if you didn't know. But did you know that the Ministry set for Order of the Phoenix only had 30,000 for the main atrium, and all of those were hand-painted cardboard tiles because the ceramic would have been way too expensive. So in actuality, the Ministry of Magic set on Epic Universe is a better replica than what was in the film. One of the sets in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix that the filmmakers did want to save some money on was the Hall of Prophecies. They decided to not go for a practical set and instead opted in for a CGI set because they figured setting up 15,000 crystal balls was a lot of work and would be very expensive if the shot didn't go well the first time. If you're enjoying these fun facts, make sure to like and subscribe because not only do I do upcoming news of Harry Potter stuff, but I also do fun facts about Harry Potter stuff. So if you like the fun facts, make sure to like and subscribe. And let me know if there were any fun facts that surprised you in the comments down below. We've talked about this fun fact before, but of course, this is in a different context. In Order of the Phoenix, when they use the visitor's entrance, they have to type in the number 62442, which, if you look at an old telephone keyboard, spells out magic, which is still a cool fact, but it's one of those ones that kind of dies as we get further into technology, where you do not have an alphanumeric keyboard anymore. Where are my T9 typers at? One of the most beautiful set pieces within Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is the Black family tapestry. It's so elegant throughout the room that it just makes you want to pause and just look at the family tree. But the author, J.K. Rowling, gave the filmmakers 70 names and backstories to be able to put onto the tapestry. There's a lot of information on that, and I wish they would release the true Black family tree in sort of a poster or large image of some sort, because I would love to just break it down. The Black family had a tradition of giving their children astrological names, such as Sirius, who is the brightest star in the sky, or Andromeda, the closest galaxy to the Milky Way, which is the one we're in, or Bellatrix, which is the third brightest star in the Orion constellation. There's many other names that we can go over that are names of stars in the sky, but I don't have all day. Helen McCrory, may she rest in peace, the actress who played Narcissa Malfoy, was actually going to play her sister Bellatrix Lestrange. But unfortunately, at the time of casting, she was pregnant and wasn't able to take the role, so they went with a secondary choice of Helena Bonham Carter, who I think we can all agree probably did a better job at that performance, but I think Helen McCrory would have been able to hold her own in that Bellatrix and made it her own character. Helena Bonham Carter, who played Bellatrix in Order of the Phoenix, sometimes took her role a little bit too far. She got into character a little bit too much and sometimes punctured an eardrum. In the scene where she's holding him by the neck and poking him with her wand, she accidentally stuck it in his ear and ruptured his eardrum. Matthew Lewis is of course okay, but you know, when you let a crazy person do things, sometimes weird things happen. Matthew Lewis, while having a ruptured eardrum, did not see any sort of pity from Alan Rickman, who played Severus Snape, because Alan Rickman banned Matthew Lewis and Rupert Grint from being within 5 meters of his car because during filming of Goblet of Fire, Matthew Lewis and Rupert Grint spilled milkshake all over the inside of Alan Rickman's car. Luna Lovegood is one of the most beloved characters in Harry Potter. So much so that 15,000 girls went out for the role. They got to a few finalists, Ivana Lynch being one of them, and the producer went through and started to watch the audition tapes for the finalist of Luna Lovegood. The first one he watched was, of course, Ivana Lynch, and he didn't watch any of the other finalists because after watching Ivana Lynch, he said, that's Luna. And we know where the story goes from there. She becomes Luna Lovegood. We all have heard the story of Ivana Lynch wanting to play Luna from the point that she was a little girl, with writing letters to J.K. Rowling talking about how much she wanted to play Luna, but struggling with a mental illness, and J.K. Rowling said, well, if you can get past that, you have a part. And funnily enough, that was never told to the casting director. So when the producer noticed Ivana Lynch and said, that's Luna Lovegood, he had no idea that J.K. Rowling promised her an audition. And so it goes to show, sometimes dreams really do come true. We all know Luna Lovegood's radish earrings, her iconic radish earrings. I think almost as iconic as the Spectre specs that she wears when we first are introduced to Luna Lovegood. But did you know that the radish earrings that Ivana Lynch wears as Luna Lovegood in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is actually earrings that she made herself by hand? It's a testament to show how much Ivana Lynch really just embodies Luna Lovegood. So Luna Lovegood is by far one of the most quirky and unique characters in Harry Potter. And to make her seem more quirky, the filmmakers originally wanted her to be barefoot the entire movie. Eventually they decided against it, but the one scene that they did have her be barefoot is the scene where she and Harry are interacting with the Thestrals, and the one moment in the book where Harry really feels accepted for who he is in the moment. But it wasn't easy for Ivana Lynch filming that scene because it was rather cold that day when they were filming. It was 50 degrees Fahrenheit on set, and she actually refused to have a foot double because she wanted to do it herself. Ivana Lynch is not the only one who wanted to embody their character even more. Daniel Radcliffe told filmmakers that during the Dumbledore's army scene, he wanted to be wearing clothes that were closely reminiscent to Remus Lupin's clothes in the third Harry Potter movie, because he felt that Harry would probably want to embody the one Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher that really understood how to teach students defense against the dark arts, which I do give testament to the filmmakers, the fact that they trusted Daniel Radcliffe enough after 4 movies to understand his character enough that he was allowed to make a costume decision that really, as a whole, didn't affect the film, but on rewatches, it makes it a little more special. There was a line in the Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix trailer that was nowhere to be found in the entire movie or deleted scenes. It was used multiple times in the movie's marketing leading up to the movie. It was a line that Dumbledore said, saying, "Don't fight, Harry. You can't win." And it was used multiple times in the marketing for the film, but never made it into the final cut. And we complain nowadays about all the things that are left on the cutting room floor before we go and watch a movie. It's been happening for a while. So one of the most heartfelt scenes in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, the book, is Christmas on a Closed Ward, where not only do they meet Gilderoy Lockhart once again, but they meet Neville and his parents. Harry, of course, knew what happened to his parents, but didn't know how bad it truly was. But the rest of the crew get introduced to Frank and Alice in this scene. And it's a rough scene to be able to see why Neville is the way he is. Because he had to live up to his parents' heroism and see how far they actually fell. But unfortunately, that scene was cut out of the movie to keep the pace up of an already super short movie, but also they didn't want to spend the money on another expensive set, which makes sense since they had to build every set they were in. Everybody who's read Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix knows Nymphadora Tonk's iconic bubblegum pink hair, but in the films, it's purple. But the reasoning behind that is because they wanted pink to specifically be associated with Dolores Umbridge. And if Nymphadora had pink hair, they were afraid that people might think pink's not that bad, right? Talking about pink being bad, Imelda Stanton was the only person that was approached or even allowed to audition for Dolores Umbridge. That is who the filmmakers had in mind, that is who they got, and that is what we get. And Imelda Stanton really fully embodied the evilness that was Dolores Umbridge, to the point that people see Dolores Umbridge as the worst character. But I think she is the character you love to hate, where Voldemort is the character you just hate. Daniel Radcliffe remarked on having to play alongside Imelda Stanton in Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix. And he said it was crazy how she could switch between Dolores Umbridge and herself as soon as scenes were done filming. As soon as they yelled cut, she would be a completely different person, which is good to know that Imelda Stanton does not actually act like Dolores Umbridge, because I think anybody who actually acted like Dolores Umbridge is a horrible person and probably should not be around children at all, ever, period. Imelda Stanton was so good as Dolores Umbridge. Stephen King talked about how she is one of the best fiction villains to come around since Hannibal Lecter, because she is the embodiment of pure evil, because she 100% thinks she's good, and that's what makes it worse. People who read Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix know that Dolores Umbridge is always described as a squat toad of a woman, which is not at all what Imelda Stanton is. But they did add padding to her costume to make her look a little bit more wide. But the other change that they did throughout the series is the more power that she gained, the darker the pink of her outfits were. Because this movie is about the rise and fall of Dolores Umbridge, and the higher she rose, the darker the pink. Another costuming choice that they did for Dolores Umbridge in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is her buttons. The buttons on her outfits were tiny little skulls. It's a very small detail that you probably wouldn't even notice when watching the movie, but if you ever stop and zoom in, her buttons are little skulls, which is just a fine detail to show even within the prettiest of pink, there can still be a lot of evil. One of the hardest scenes for Imelda Stanton to film in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is when she had to be mean to Professor Trelawney, because Imelda Stanton and Emma Thompson are actually best friends and have been in 7 movies together and even live across the street from each other. So I can only imagine how hard it must have been to sit there and be so mean to your best friend, even though it's not real. Another connection between actors in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is Emma Thompson and Helena Bonham Carter. They actually were not allowed to be on set together. Luckily, they didn't have any scenes together, but the reason they decided to keep them away from each other when filming was because Helena Bonham Carter had an affair with Emma Thompson's husband, who, ironically enough, is Kenneth Branagh, Gilderoy Lockhart. So next time you write your fan fiction, have Trelawney, Bellatrix, and Gilderoy Lockhart having a love triangle in it. That's what you need. A fun little callback to Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets happens in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. When Ron rescues Harry in the second movie, and Harry goes, "What are you doing here?" Ron responds with, "Rescuing you, of course." And when Moody shows up to the Dursleys' house to take Harry away, his response to Harry when Harry says, "What are you doing here?" is, "Rescuing you, of course," which is just a nice little fun callback, you know. Anytime someone comes to rescue Harry, he goes, "What are you doing here?" And they go, "Rescuing you, of course, because you're always needing to be rescued. Harry, you are not a damsel in distress. Stop needing to be rescued." When Harry and Cho kiss in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, it was actually actresses Katie Long's first on-screen kiss, which took weeks for her to prepare because unfortunately Daniel Radcliffe, right before the scene, got sick, so it had to be delayed for a week or two. So of course, the tension between them got to be a lot. James and Oliver Phelps, the actors who play Fred and George Weasley in the Harry Potter series, actually played 2 roles in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix movie. Not only do they play Fred and George, of course, but they actually play their uncles, Gideon and Fabian Pruitt. We see them in the Order of the Phoenix picture that Sirius shows Harry before getting on the Hogwarts Express. Before Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, wand choreography was very limited. There may have been 1-2 wand-to-wand battles throughout the entire series up until Order of the Phoenix. But for Order of the Phoenix, they actually had to hire a wand choreographer because there were so many different fighting styles that they needed to show each character using. The choreographer, Paul Harris, was hired just for that job, to give different styles to each wizard. So when fighting with wands, it actually looked a little bit more epic than just standing there pointing a stick at the other person yelling Latin words, which probably would not have been as fun. Some of the wand styles that they had to use with fighting are Lucius Malfoy, who his fighting style is a little bit more rigid and formal, like he was trained by a professional duelist, whereas Sirius Black's style was more fluid and spontaneous, like he was a street fighter who grew up dueling spontaneously on the streets, which reflects their styles. You know, Lucius Malfoy probably had a more formal training and background in dueling, whereas Sirius probably just learned from fighting in the hallways with James and learning how to dodge and duck and dive and dodge the 40s in dueling. So it's kind of a cool little feature and was a great addition to the movie. The filmmakers really trusted Ralph Fiennes to embody the role of Lord Voldemort. In the 4th movie, he asked to not have slit eyes so he can emote more. And in the 5th movie, he asked if his wand could have a little pinky hook on the end of it, so when he's doing his more flourishy movements that are more snake-like, he wouldn't accidentally throw his wand like a Wiimote on Christmas Day. And I think it added a certain je ne sais quoi to his character that it worked for him. And I don't think a different Voldemort would be able to ever embody what Ralph Fiennes did, who is a more cartoony version and not as evil as he probably could be. So we'll see what they do with the HBO show. During the filming of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, they had to take a small pause in filming for a couple weeks because Emma Watson and Daniel Radcliffe had to take exams, because of course they were still in school at the time and wanted to continue their schooling throughout the filming. And sometimes school gets in the way of filming, but at least they prioritize schooling over a career in film. But with Emma Watson and Daniel Radcliffe wanting to focus on school rather than filming, it was partially because they didn't know if they wanted to continue playing their roles as Harry and Hermione. The only one of the trio who never considered quitting the movie is Rupert Grint. And that's probably why J.K. Rowling decided not to kill him off, because it would have been pretty bad. It's like, hey, I know the other 2 wanted to quit and you wanted to stay on until the end, but I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you dead, and you're no longer going to be in there. So maybe that's why he ended up staying alive and becoming the end goal for Hermione. All right, and with that, that is all of the fun facts. So remember, let me know in the comments which fun fact surprised you, and make sure to stay marvelous. And as always, Knox. Do you like my content? Do you like my content enough to pay for it? Well, if you want to see my Tuesday videos one day earlier, make sure to sign up for a membership so you can get that early. There are other perks and benefits for being a member, of course. Make sure to check it out and see what you like. But that is the main benefit. You get it a day early. I will start doing live streams and maybe even do live trivia just for members, but that's down the road. But if you are interested in getting videos early and some of the other perks of being a member, just check it out. You don't have to. I don't want you to. But if you're interested, I'll see you there. Let's get back to the videos. You've seen Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, but do you know all of these behind the scenes things? Even Easter eggs. So in Tom Riddle's childhood bedroom, there was a photo that leads to what happens later on in the movie. Or did you know Maggie Smith, during the filming of Half-Blood Prince, was also fighting breast cancer? Or did you know there was a character that unfortunately was tragically murdered before the premiere of the movie that he was in? These are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So let's get started with 35 things that you probably didn't know about Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Bonnie Wright not only played Ginny Weasley in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince as the future love interest of Harry throughout the movie, but she also played a role as the art director and was responsible for decorating the Weasley household. After 6+ years of being a Weasley, she probably understood the character pretty well. Did you know that the little orphan boy that Dumbledore goes to meet actually has a connection with the older version of Voldemort? Not just being Tom Riddle, yes, but Hero Fiennes Tiffin is actually the nephew of actor Ray Fiennes, who plays Voldemort. So that is why they looked so similar. We talked about this in the introduction, but Maggie Smith, who played Minerva McGonagall, of course, during the filming of Half-Blood Prince, was undergoing chemotherapy treatment for her breast cancer.
Why is it when something happens, it is always you three?
Which ultimately won, and may she rest in peace, was able to live another 15 years. At the introduction, we also talked about the tragic passing of one of the actors before the premiere of the movie. Robert Knox unfortunately never got to see his movie premiere as Marcus Belby because he was tragically murdered days before the premiere. It's not a fun fact for anyway, but it did happen, and unfortunately he was not able to reprise his role in the later films. Though Slughorn, played by Jim Broadbent, was giving Draco Malfoy the cold shoulder the entire movie of Half-Blood Prince, they actually knew each other from The Borrowers. And because of that, Jim referred to Tom Felton the entire movie as P. Green, which was his name in the movie. Small little addition to that, the actor who played Arthur Weasley, Mark Williams, was also in that movie. So fun little connection that the actors all have. If you enjoy these fun facts and Easter eggs, make sure to like and subscribe for more, because that's just what we're going to be doing, is fun facts, news, all sorts of stuff. If you like learning new stuff about old Harry Potter or new stuff about new Harry Potter stuff, like that's what we do here. So make sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when I post new stuff. So let's get back to the fun facts. So we talked about in Order of the Phoenix that Helen McCrory was actually supposed to play Bellatrix Lestrange, but was pregnant during filming of Order of the Phoenix, so unfortunately had to step down from the role, which then allowed Helena Bonham Carter to become Bellatrix Lestrange. Well, before they decided to give the role of Narcissa Malfoy to Helen McCrory, they were thinking about giving it to Naomi Watts. But they decided to ultimately go with Helen McCrory as Narcissa Malfoy, and Naomi Watts did not get the role, of course. So in Half-Blood Prince, you have the weirdly wet, creepy man who stands in the background and never really gets referenced. He's just kind of there and for some reason always looks wet and greasy. Well, that character is Fenrir Greyback, played by Dave Lagano, who is actually known for his prowess as a cage fighter. Unfortunately, we really didn't get to see him do much fighting in this movie. We do see him tackle Lavender Brown in Deathly Hallows Part 2, but he's just kind of the creepy, wet, greasy guy in the background for most of this movie. Those who have read the Half-Blood Prince book know that the book opens with a chapter called The Other Minister, where we get faked out a little bit when we meet Cornelius Fudge to find out that no, he's actually been replaced by Rufus Scrimgeour. And this scene was originally going to be in Half-Blood Prince. They cast Bill Nighy as Rufus Scrimgeour and everything, but ultimately decided to remove that scene and just have him be in Deathly Hallows Part 1, which Bill Nighy did a fantastic job in, and I'm kind of sad we didn't get to see him in Half-Blood Prince. Though more than one actor played Lavender Brown throughout the Harry Potter series, her role in Half-Blood Prince was far more important than just having a background extra that they named Lavender Brown. And over 7,000 girls tried out for the role of Lavender Brown, and it ultimately went to Jessie Cave after she had a 5-hour improvisation session with Rupert Grint, which won her the role because they had such great chemistry, which meant nothing for the movie because Lavender Brown is a horrible character Ron wasn't good for her, and she was not good for Ron. So there's a scene in Half-Blood Prince where you have Harry, but this scene took 20 takes for them to do because Rupert and Daniel just could not stop laughing because of how awkward the scene was. And I get it. I would probably uncomfortably laugh the entire time as well. So we all have heard accounts of Daniel Radcliffe absolutely detesting the Quidditch scenes because it would require him to sit for long hours on a fake broomstick surrounded by green screen and nothing happening otherwise. Well, Rupert Grint absolutely loved filming the Quidditch scenes. This is one of his favorite parts. Granted, he spent 5 movies before this not getting to do Quidditch scenes, so I'm sure he was looking forward to finally getting to be the Quidditch hero, because as we all know, Weasley is our king. Though Half-Blood Prince is not everybody's favorite movie, it also wasn't Daniel Radcliffe's favorite performance either. He almost decided to give up on the Harry Potter series after this movie because he said his performance in this role for Half-Blood Prince was very one note and just his weakest performance that he had ever given. But after almost 10 years of playing the same character, I'm sure he was getting a little bit burnt out of it. Hopefully, they have figured out how to make sure that our young child actors for the HBO reboot do not go through the same problem. Every time David Yates, the director of Half-Blood Prince and future iterations of the Harry Potter movies, got the scene that he perfectly wanted, he would jump around like a 5-year-old boy. And this is according to Tom Felton. Tom Felton was like, yeah, every time he would get the shot he wanted, David Yates would just dance around and jump around and yippee himself, which is fun. At least he enjoys the craft and had a vision in mind. I'm not a huge fan of the David Yates style in the Harry Potter series, but you know, to each their own. He did what he needed to do, which was make the Harry Potter movies. Hopefully, the TV series will have a little bit more of a consistency in its style. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince cost $250 million for them to make, which marks it as one of the highest budgets for a film during that time. But this goes to show that Warner Brothers had a lot of faith in the series, in the fact that they were willing to break records on how much money they would spend in the series because they knew it would do so well. Warner Brothers' $250 million bet that they put towards the Harry Potter and Half-Blood Prince paid off in the first weekend when it grossed $394 million in the opening weekend. 3 days, $394 million. People were looking forward to this. It continued to make money after that, but they made all of their money back in the first 3 days of the movie being out in theaters, which is great because some movies that have come out now are barely making $394 million their whole run in the box office, and they cost way more than $250 million. One thing that all fans hate is a delay. And being told that Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was going to be delayed from 2008 to 2009 ruffled quite a bit of feathers with the fandom. So much so that Warner Brothers received death threats if they didn't release Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Which, mind you, I think is a bit extreme, but I get it. I was looking forward to the movie too. Did I know at the time of release that it was being delayed for a year? No, not at all. I didn't really follow the movie news until it was like, hey, the movie's coming out. And I'm like, hey, cool, I'm excited. So, awesome. Movie came out, it was a box office success. That's what matters at the end of the day. But also, don't threaten studios just because you're not getting what you want right at the time you want. Doesn't get anywhere. Just put you in jail. Stop it. So we've talked about the budget of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince being $250 million. Well, part of that is probably because they had to build 80 different sets. It's a lot of sets to build, and that's a lot of money to spend. So 80 different sets, probably had to pay Rufus Scrimgeour for just existing at the time because they didn't put him in the movie, but 80 different sets, and also used 1,500 special effects, which there was a lot of magic casting, there was potions and all that, so physical and CGI, probably a lot of money put into making Half-Blood Prince work the way it was supposed to. Did it work? You tell me. I'm not the biggest fan of Half-Blood Prince, as I've probably made clear, but expensive movie, expensive sets. The scene where Harry and Dumbledore arrive to find the cave where the locket is stored takes place. Is the only scene to be filmed in the Harry Potter series outside of the UK, which makes sense, and probably also makes sense on why it cost $250 million to make this movie, because on location filming is very expensive, and that is why in Order of the Phoenix, to save money, they decided to go with practical sets than on location. Though the cliffs of Maher were filmed on location, the cave within the cliff was all CGI. It was all set in CGI. And not on location. Of course, there was not a secret cave within the cliffs of Maher that nobody's ever seen that has a secret underground lake where there are a bunch of dead bodies. Though that would be creepy, it's a CGI set within the cave, which is okay. I'd prefer not to have a weird, creepy serial killer cave full of dead bodies in a lake. That may or may not have been Voldemort's kills or just already there. We don't know about that one. So one of the first scenes filmed in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Millennium Bridge just looked cooler with its destruction for the movie, so that's why they used it. Though John Williams composed the main Harry Potter themes that we hear throughout the entire Harry Potter series, specifically da 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 da, that's enough for me. Nicholas Hooper composed the music for Half-Blood Prince, which added a certain mysterious element to it, and also added more emotional depth to the different scenes throughout the movie, which John Williams kind of didn't have in the first two movies where he composed the score because they were more happy and less downtrodden. Ultimately, the choices that David Yates made when directing Half-Blood Prince did pay off, where the movie was nominated for an Academy Award and several BAFTA awards. Did they win? No. But sometimes a nomination is almost as good as a win, because not everybody got nominated, so still in the top, just not the top of the top. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, there are 27 owls that make an appearance throughout the movie, but each of those 27 owls had 3 doubles, so that if, the owl was not cooperating, they would bring in an owl that looked exactly like that one, so hopefully the scene could continue. So yes, there were 27 owls, but it was 27 times 3, which means there were 81 owls in total used for the movies, which is absolutely crazy. That is a lot of owls. You could almost say it was a pack of owls, I mean. Potions play a very significant role within Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And some of the potions that we see in the movie are actually practical potions. They're not actual potions, but the effects that we see of the bubbling and all that are practical. They were actually remote controlled, so, different things would happen depending on what remote was used. Which is kind of cool that it wasn't just, hey, we're gonna add CGI bubbles to that empty pot. It was actually like, hey, we have colored liquid in there, which is being controlled and jiggling and bubbling and smoking via remote control, which is cool. Plus, we also know from Chamber of Secrets, most of the time the potions that we see are just actually some sort of beef stew or broth. So makes it even cooler, because you could actually probably drink those potions. Would I recommend it? Probably not. They've been sitting on a set for about a couple hours and probably don't taste good. So in the fourth movie, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the Dark Mark was a more important centerpiece for the movie. But in this movie, they had to do so many Dark Marks for all the Death Eaters that we see that it was just a stick-on tattoo. So ironically enough, even though in the books we never see that Draco Malfoy has a Dark Mark and just acts like he might be a Death Eater, in this movie, he's just got a stick-on tattoo, so he's just pretending to be a Death Eater and doesn't actually have a real Dark Mark, but I get it. It's a lot easier to just stick it on and have it for a day, wash it off easily, than sitting in a makeup chair for probably hours while they try to paint on a Dark Mark every day, where you do a stick-on tattoo that takes 5 minutes. Makes sense. So there's a scene in the Weasleys' house where we see knitting without a person, just 2 needles knitting themselves and making a scarf or a Weasley sweater probably. Well, that was all practical. Those were controlled by robot arms, and it was actually David Yates' mother that they used as the base for the knitting. They said, hey, you're knitting. We're just going to film it and use practical effects to make the knitting actually happen, which is really cool that, they didn't have to do that. They could have made that all CGI, but it's real. It was actually knitting a sweater because they trained the robot to knit the sweater based on David Yates' mother. Luna Lovegood, everyone's favorite character, is the most unique character in the Harry Potter series. One of the more unique things that she wore in this movie was her Christmas tree dress. The dress took over 2 months to design and make to have it be perfect and not look really weird. And of course, Evanna Lynch pulled it off once again with her just performance as Luna Lovegood. She is going to be a very hard person to replace, but I'm sure we will find the perfect Luna Lovegood once again. Evanna Lynch embodied her character of Luna Lovegood so much that she designed most of the accessories that Luna wore throughout the movie series. We talked about Order of the Phoenix, where she designed her radish earrings, but in this movie, she not only designed her lion head that she wore for the Quidditch game,
Is it a tonic?
but she also designed her rabbit corsage that she wore for Slughorn's party. Why the rabbit? Because the hare is her Patronus. So she took her Patronus and designed a corsage for her to be able to wear, which just shows how much that Evanna Lynch knew about her character. One of the questions that gets brought up a lot was, how did Dumbledore know about this random cave that Voldemort was hiding a Horcrux within? Well, if you read the books, you would know that he was told about it by the headmistress of the orphanage. But in the movie, there is a subtle Easter egg in the background of that flashback that gives it away. And that's a picture of a cliff. It's the exact cliff that we see from the angle of the camera when Dumbledore and Harry show up, which is a weird angle to be on. Like, how did he get that picture? But by and by, that is what gave Dumbledore the clue that he needed to check that out. Because why would young Tom Riddle be so infatuated with that cave that he has a picture of the cliff that they went on trips to? Because he's hiding a Horcrux there eventually. So a scene that is not in the books, but is in the movie, is just a slight line change when Hermione is smelling Amortentia. She talks about how she smells fresh paper and fresh cut grass. And in the book, she goes silent. But in the movie, she says spearmint
For
toothpaste.
example, I smell freshly mown grass and parchment and spearmint toothpaste.
Which most people just kind of like, haha, she likes books and grass and toothpaste, whatever, she's a weirdo. But there's a scene earlier in the movie where she tells Ron that he's got toothpaste on his face.
Got a bit of toothpaste.
Which, in the books, it kind of hints that she smells something that's familiar to her with Ron, and we don't have to, we can put it together. But in the movies, they had to kind of spell it out a little bit more to us, but it's a reference to her liking Ron, which is kind of the major underlying plot point with them throughout the movie. She likes Ron likes her, but she doesn't tell Ron. Ron gets with Lavender, and then at the end, they do kind of get together. Happy endings all around, but that's just kind of what it hints at. Just a little hint that, you know, if you read the books, you're like, I get it. If you're watching the movies, you're like, interesting. A running joke throughout Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince is that Slughorn just doesn't care about anybody that doesn't benefit him. And Ron is one of those people that he just doesn't pay attention to, and the fact that he always calls Ron the wrong name. But there is a point where he actually calls Ron by his real name and calls him Rupert, which is kind of funny because his name is actually Rupert. So just a fun little Easter egg in there that, you know, blink and you miss it because you're like, ah, it's funny. He calls him by the wrong name constantly. But what's more funny is that he calls him by his actor's name. But I guess it's still better than being called P. Green, right? So one of the practical effects that they used was when Ron was poisoned and started foaming at the mouth.
Ron!
He actually was foaming at the mouth, but luckily it wasn't because he was poisoned. It was because he had a mouthful of egg whites that, of course, when pushed through your teeth and your mouth, probably foam up and look kind of like you're dying. So he could have been poisoned by salmonella, but he wasn't actually poisoned. Luckily, Harry shoved a bezoar down his mouth and saved his life. Every Harry Potter movie from Prisoner of Azkaban on kept getting just a little bit darker, and this movie was no exception. Half-Blood Prince really had to set up how dark and miserable Deathly Hallows was going to be. So of course, this movie did what it was supposed to do and is one of the darkest movies in the Harry Potter series at that point. It was darker than the last one. And this one is definitely the one that does not have a happy ending. It is Dumbledore's dead. Voldemort wins this book. He doesn't even really show up in this book, and Voldemort wins. Snape gets away. He just killed Dumbledore. We thought he was a good guy, so we lost one of our most powerful potion makers who we thought was a good guy. And what is going to happen? Is the school going to close? Is Voldemort going to win? Well, we'll have to wait to find out. All right, well, that is it. That is so many fun facts and little mini fun facts throughout the other fun facts. So let me know, did you know all of these? I don't think you did. If you did, that's awesome. Do you have more? Make sure to put in the comments because I would love to know more. These were just the ones that I thought were interesting that I figured a lot of people didn't know. Make sure to like and subscribe, and as always, stay marvelous and Nox. So we all know Deathly Hallows, Harry Potter, 1 book, 2 movies. But do we know why? I know a lot of people are like, well, they just wanted more money. Probably. It was a very successful thing, but if that was the case, they would have done that from Goblet of Fire on. Like, hey, look, Goblet of Fire, 2 movies. Order of the Phoenix, 2 really boring movies. Half-Blood Prince, 2 also really boring movies. And then Deathly Hallows, 2 movies. But there's a reason behind why they went with 2 parts rather than 1. Steve Kloves, the screenwriter for Deathly Hallows, wrote the script, and after looking at it was like, yeah, I think this would probably break down to be about 4 to 5 hours. It was 500 pages long, and yeah, he said it would probably be better to be 2 parts. So Warner Brothers goes, all right, all right, let's make it 2 parts. And the producer, David Heyman, said after everything was filmed, because they filmed both movies back to back, after everything was both filmed, guess what? It came out to 5.5 hours. So of course, it was probably good that they split it into 2 parts. Welcome to Harry Potter Fun Facts. We are doing Deathly Hallows, part 1 and part 2 together, but guess what? This is gonna be 2 videos. So stay tuned. Next week, we will post part 2. It is a lot of fun facts. Over 60 fun facts. There's some, well, it's technically 59, but some of the fun facts are going to be like multiple facts within a fun fact. So 60 plus fun facts all together, 2 whole parts, just like the movies. Guess what? Same thing that just happened with the movie with, hey, look, I tried to write it. It was a little bit long. We should probably split it in 2 parts. That's the same thing that happened with my fun facts is I tried to write it, a little bit too long, splitting it into 2 parts. So more videos for you to watch. And if you enjoy the fun facts, make sure to check out the playlist right here, which is full of Harry Potter fun facts, because if you like this style, make sure to check out more and make sure to subscribe because there's more to come with my Harry Potter content. So both Deathly Hallows 1 and 2 were filmed back to back as if they were 1 movie because originally they were going to be. They decided after the script was written to split it into 2, but they still filmed it all together to make sure that it was a cohesive story and then just split it at the best point they could. It took them over 236 days for them to film the entire part 1 and part 2 Deathly Hallows. Principal photography began February 19th, 2009. They finally wrapped on the actual filming June 12th of 2010. So yeah, it was 236 days of filming, but in total, it took them over a year to make these 2 movies, which is crazy. It took them that long, but it worked out. They made a butt ton of money. You know the 19-year later epilogue scene that's at the end of the Deathly Hallows Part 2? Yeah, that wasn't the first time that they filmed it. That was the second full scene that they filmed of that. The first one, they filmed at actual King's Cross Station, but the paparazzi found out, took a bunch of pictures, and then the scene was kind of trashed online because the makeup that they used made them look a little too old. So David Yates, the director, called everybody back and said, hey, we're going to do it in studio and we'll do lighter makeup and make it look a little bit better. It still wasn't great. I remember looking at it and going, this is awkward. Why do they look dumpy? It's like they're supposed to be, Ron and Harry are supposed to be R's who should probably be in somewhat of shape, but okay, whatever. But yeah, the scene was filmed twice. The first time at King's Cross, the second time on a soundstage that looked like King's Cross because David Yates was not happy with the first recording. And a lot of people were like, well, why didn't they just recast them as older characters? Well, David Yates didn't want to. And honestly, I agree. I think it would have taken everybody out. It's like, hey, these guys were 20-something-year-old adults. It would have looked weird if you had totally different people 40 years or 20 years later, basically. So I get it. I think it was fine. It was a good choice. Maybe now with the new TV series, they'll just digitally age them up a little bit more. They'll have plenty of material for them to look at to be able to age them up. So we will see in the future. So to me, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is a heist story because in multiple times they are breaking in somewhere and stealing some shit. That's a heist. David Yates had a vision of the Deathly Hallows being a road movie and a verite documentary, which is more of like the shaky cam follow behind idea. Like more real, down to earth, eye level, like, hey, let's see what's going on. Like standing behind a bush, watching them as they're doing their thing, like kind of like The Office, but without the talking head part, which is great and all, but it made for long scenes of them just walking through fields and, I wanted more action. I don't know about you, but it's like, you added fake action in all of these other movies, and then you have these action scenes that are already written, and you don't use them as well as you could have. But whatever, each their own. We're getting a remake of it, so maybe they'll do it more of a heist style breakdown than just a fly by the seat of your pants road trip movie. So the scene of the Seven Potters was one of the most complicated scenes that they had to film. Things that, so many things had to go right, and it took over 2 days to make that scene. Unfortunately, filming on Deathly Hallows wasn't as fun all the time as filming 7 Daniel Radcliffes on one screen, such as Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double, David Holmes, who was unfortunately injured during an aerial stunt where he was thrown back against a wall and ended up paralyzed. It's a very unfortunate thing, and luckily he has survived, but, he will never be able to continue his job. I know he and Daniel Radcliffe were great friends before and have stayed great friends after. One of the most important things in the Harry Potter series would have to be the music. I don't know about you, but I think music makes the movie. And the Harry Potter series, having 8 films in the series, had multiple composers, because it's hard for one composer to stay on for 8 movies when they're doing other movies in between. Of course, with tradition, most composers, I think, only got to do 2 movies each in the series, and we got a new composer for the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2, which is Alexandra Desplat. Which, it's weird with a composer coming into a series like this, because I'm sure having to take what has been and add on to it, but keep it recognizable, is really hard work. And I think it's a testament to Alexandra that she was able to take what was there, but add her own twist to it and keep it feeling like Harry Potter. There's one character that was missing from Deathly Hallows Part 1, and that was Minerva McGonagall, Dame Maggie Smith. She was not in Part 1, and it was the only movie in that series that she was not a part of. But I don't blame her. She filmed Half-Blood Prince while battling cancer and won, so she deserved a hard-deserved break. And she took off for Part 1 and came back to be the badass that she... Actually, the set used for Hogsmeade in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which what they did was just change a little bit of the set dressing and shot it from different angles to make it look slightly different. But next time you watch, take a look. It's the same set, just a little bit different. So in the sacking of Severus Snape in the book, it's McGonagall versus Snape fighting it out to eventually Snape's fleeing of the scene. In the movies, they originally wanted it to be Harry versus Snape, and the author stepped in and said, no, it needs to be McGonagall versus Snape. And honestly, the whole scene, the sacking of Severus Snape scene in the movie, I think is better than it is in the books. Detail to show that Snape wasn't all bad. We just never noticed it. So the goblins in Gringotts, yeah, those prosthetics were probably like half of them just doing the goblin heads. The Malfoy Manor, the main scene within Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, was based off of Hardwick Hall set that they used as the background. Could you imagine accidentally running into that and it just going with you? I couldn't imagine the work that takes into. No wonder there were so many people in the credits. One of the problems with child casting is you may cast a character that looks a specific way as a child, but as he grows up, he changes drastically. One of those characters is Harry Melling, who as a child was a large, dumpy child, but as he grew up, he lost a lot of weight, to the point that they almost recast him halfway through the series, but decided, we'll just give him padding. And it was no different within Deathly Hallows. When they had the scene where Harry says goodbye to the Dursleys, they padded Dudley out. That's why he looks a little bit awkward, like, he's this big bulking guy, but, still is shaped a little weird. But it fit with the scene. I don't think you're a waste of space. This is one very small line within the series, but hopefully in the future, Harry and Dudley did get together and work out their differences. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, over 500 wands were created, and most of them were broken. They had to be checked in and out for maintenance purposes to make sure that they weren't being stolen, but also just, to keep track of where they were and if they needed to make more wands. But through filming, 500 wands were made, which is crazy. It's a lot of wands. And with those 500 wands, and most of them being broken, the majority of them were broken by Daniel Radcliffe, who, contrary to what Daniel Radcliffe says, broke 80 wands. mostly because in between scenes he was playing it with as a drumstick. So, you know, kids will be kids, I guess. But 80 wands over 8 movies. That means he went through 10 wands per movie, which when you break it down that way, that's not that much, but still. They made just 500 wands for Deathly Hallows. So how many wands did they make for the rest of the movies? And Daniel Radcliffe's over there breaking 80 of them. Everybody knows Harry's iconic lightning bolt shaped scar, but it was applied among Harry and his stunt doubles over 5,000 times throughout the series. And luckily, it was washable, so he wasn't walking around with a lightning bolt shaped scar when he wasn't filming, because I'm sure after a while, the Sharpie would have stayed on. But it was washable, almost like the dark mark that they used in Half-Blood Prince. The scene in Gringotts, where they break into the vault, had a lot of green screen, but also there were a lot of practical effects. You can only imagine how many coins that is. Within Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2, there are so many explosions throughout the whole series, but most of the rubble was made of polyurethane rubber, so if it did hit a cast member, it at least didn't hurt that bad. It's probably more like getting hit with a kickball of some sort or one of those inflatable exercise balls with a little bit of weight behind it. So it probably knocked them over, but nobody was hurt when they got hit by an explosion. So that's a good thing. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, when we finally get into the room requirements and see the room of hidden things, it is filled with every last prop that was ever used in the Harry Potter series. It was 72 containers worth of props that were used, sort of super artsy prop. It was probably made by Mirafora Mina, who is famous of the pair Mina Lima, who made most of the props for the Harry Potter series. But Mirafora Mina designed all of the Horcruxes and tried to use their inspiration from their mother, who was a jeweler. So that's why there are so many encrusted jewels upon all of the Horcruxes. The final shot filmed within the Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows filming had the Golden Trio on set throwing themselves onto the ground in a blue screen room. It was made to be their final scene altogether. It was not the final scene of the movie, but it was the final scene filmed with the 3 of them. And as soon as they landed the shot and David Yates yelled cut, all 3 of them burst into tears because it was the last scene that they were filming together in that movie series as a whole. We all know about Rupert Grint's purchase of an ice cream truck, where he cream truck and gave everybody ice cream because he knew how hard of a day it was going to be for the last day of filming for everybody, not just them, but for the crew itself, because a lot of the crew was in all 8 movies. Watch these kids grow up, and you know, what better way to fight off sadness than ice cream and chocolate. On the final day of filming of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, the Golden Trio gave each other gifts. Rupert Grint gave Watson and Radcliffe trumpets that were engraved with personal messages. Daniel Radcliffe gave Grint and Watson still images from the movies. Specifically for Rupert, he gave him the one where Harry is standing on Ron's head, and out of just a joke, he signed them. And then Emma Watson gave both Rupert Grint and Daniel Radcliffe books, specifically diaries for them to probably log how they felt, because Emma Watson said, hey, it's going to be a hard couple years after this. So, in typical Hermione fashion, she gave them a book. Now, the cast may have given each other gifts on their final day, but they also took some stuff that they wanted as well. Emma Watson kept Hermione's time turner, cloak, and wand. Daniel Radcliffe kept his first pair of glasses that he wore in the first scene that he filmed, which was actually the last scene of Sorcerer's Stone, but also kept the last pair of glasses that he wore in the final scene that he filmed, which I think is kind of special, the fact that he kept both pairs of glasses. It's Tiny Harry's glasses, Adult Harry's glasses. And Alan Rickman stole Snape's wand. They weren't supposed to take any of the props, but I'm sure after 8 movies, most of the crew probably was just like, it's fine, just don't say anything about it. In the final weeks of filming, the Golden Trio had to clean out their trailers that they had probably been living in on and off for 10 years. While Rupert Grint was cleaning out his trailer, he found letters, birthday letters from when he turned 14 from the cast and crew, and became very emotional reading through them because, you know, that was when he was young. 14, he was probably filming Chamber and or Prisoner of Azkaban. So, you know, to look back at how people were so nice to him then, it was probably very heartfelt, especially at the looming end coming up in the next couple weeks of his filming. So he got really emotional when reading those birthday letters. So there you go, Hermione. He does have an emotional range larger than a teaspoon. And the show never stops for the trio. Yes, filming may have ended, but the day after filming, Daniel Radcliffe had to fly from London to New York to be in a play that he was in. Just immediately. Hey, I'm glad we're done filming, but bye. I gotta be in a play tomorrow. My stage time is in 12 hours. My flight takes 18. So, hey, at least he found a job out of Harry Potter. Because I know a lot of characters who do movies and do the same character over and over again usually end up getting typecasted and have a lot of trouble within Hollywood. All right, so that's it for part 1. If you want more of these fun facts, make sure to check out part 2. It will be linked up here once it actually goes live. So make sure to like, subscribe so you can see it when it comes out. And without further ado, stay marvelous. Knox. During the filming of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, Emma Watson said kissing Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint was like kissing her brothers. But one thing that she did add to that was Daniel Radcliffe was a little more talkative, which means they probably had a little bit of a better chemistry together, and that's why they were able to talk and make jokes, where Ron was probably extremely awkward, which seems kind of how their relationship is as characters as well. So welcome back to Harry Potter Fun Facts. This is part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, make sure to hit up here, which will take you to part 1, because like Deathly Hallows, there is so much in this that I had to split it into 2 parts. So without further ado, let's get more into this, and we should get over 60 fun facts by the end of this video. Let's talk more about Emma Watson having to kiss her co-stars who she felt like were brothers, so it was a very awkward situation for them on set. Well, it was a little more awkward when having to kiss Daniel Radcliffe, because they only found out a day before the scene was filmed that they weren't going to be clothed for that scene. They were going to be naked and covered in silver body paint. And of course, with intimacy in any sort of filming set, all non-essential workers are not allowed on set. So of course, Rupert Grint was not allowed during that scene. So when you see it in the movie, Rupert wasn't actually there when they were filming that scene. Which probably helps Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson's on-screen kiss be a little bit less awkward, because there's a lot less people there to make it awkward. But also at the same time, they were both naked, so it probably was still very awkward. Unlike the kissing scene with Harry and Hermione, the kissing scene with Ron and Hermione went a little bit differently. The first kiss that they tried to do on the first take, they went so fast into the kiss to try to do it quickly and get it over with, they accidentally just slammed each other's faces together and hurt themselves slightly. So it took them 6 takes to actually get the perfect kiss in for that scene. Mostly because every time they would get their faces close together to actually kiss, they would just start laughing. After both Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2 had finally released, during a press tour, Emma Watson was asked about her kissing Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint. And they asked her, who would she have rather kissed on set if it weren't them? And Emma Watson answered her 12-year-old self probably would have loved to kiss Tom Felton, who played Draco Malfoy, which probably extended the Hermione fanfiction into the atmosphere after that, because clearly Hermione had a thing for Draco Malfoy. But the only problem with that is Draco Malfoy would have probably had to tell his father about this.
Oh, my father will hear about this!
Though Emma Watson may have wanted to date Tom Felton's real-life girlfriend at the time, Jade Gordon, who was a stunt assistant on set, actually got to play his in-universe wife for the 19 years later scene. But it did take some persuading on Felton's part to convince her to play that part. In interviews, Tom Felton, who played Draco Malfoy, was asked what the worst part of filming the Harry Potter series was, and his response was having to dye his hair blonde. So he pretty much enjoyed his time on the Harry Potter set, if that's the worst thing about being in that series, was having to dye your hair blonde. So, plus, he is technically the highest paid actor per minute that he is in the movies, so I think he's doing pretty good. During the filming of the 7 Potter scene, Daniel Radcliffe had to basically be all of his co-stars, at least 6 of them, and he said his favorite person to play was Rupert Grint, because Rupert kind of struts when he walks, so it was just kind of fun to do that. He also said he looked fantastic when wearing Fleur Delacour's outfit, when Daniel Radcliffe had to wear the outfit that Fleur was wearing when she turns into Harry. which my only favorite scene of that little spot is when he's taking off the bra and he says, "Don't look at me, Bill, I'm hideous."
Bill, look away. I'm hideous.
Donald Gleason, who you may now know as the lead star for the Office spinoff, The Paper, played Bill Weasley in Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. His father, Brendan Gleeson, played Mad-Eye Moody. So a weird connection there, but what's even weirder about it, there is a preemptive Easter egg in Half-Blood Prince where Harry remarks that Bill Weasley, after being attacked by Fenrir Greyback, looks a lot like Mad-Eye Moody. But what's interesting about that is Donald Gleason wasn't cast when Half-Blood Prince came out. The scene where the Order arrives to number 4 Privet Drive in Deathly Hallows Part 1, we see all of the cast land on broomsticks. Emma Watson and Rupert Grint found the brooms to be a little bit uncomfortable, so they had plaster casts of their buttocks made that were attached to the brooms to make lying down a little bit more comfortable for them. I'm not sure if any of the other actors had to have that happen for them, but for sure, Emma Watson and Rupert Grint had butt seats made specifically for them for that scene. Emma Watson embodying her character as Hermione Granger extended through the series. The first time that she walked onto the set of her bedroom in the scene where she obliviates her parents, she said, get her more books, because of course Hermione Granger would have tons of books in her room, considering half the stuff that she brings with her as she's running around the country as a wanted criminal is a library of books, and even Ron makes fun of her for it. In the amazing King's Cross Station scene, Michael Gambon was phenomenal within that scene. He said when he saw Daniel Radcliffe walk on screen of the afterlife scene, he felt like crying because it was just a very sentimental scene where two old friends meet and catch up, and it was just a very special scene for him. May Michael Gambon rest in peace. In the cafe scene on Tottenham Court Road, where Harry ends up taking out all the Death Eaters that come to attack him, there's a stage, so that's probably where you know that from. The secret that Snape held until his death about his love for Lily Potter was told to Alan Rickman early on in the filming of the entire Harry Potter series. Alan Rickman was the only one who knew about it until Deathly Hallows, the book, came out. And Alan Rickman got in a couple fights with producers and directors because he would put his character in a different direction because of the choices that he would have to make knowing what his part played in the entire series. But in the end, it was a surprise to everyone that Alan Rickman knew the whole time who his character truly was. And that's what made Alan Rickman's Snape probably one of most people's favorite characters. And I say Alan Rickman's Snape because Alan Rickman played Snape in a different way than how Snape is in the books. Julie Walters, who played Molly Weasley, was asked what her favorite line in the entire Harry Potter series was. And I think this is probably everybody's favorite line, but it's "Not my daughter, you bitch." Of course, is directly pulled from the story itself, which I don't think you could have done it any better. Matthew Lewis said the first time that he had actually met Ray Fiennes was in the scene where Ray Fiennes brings Harry's body back to Hogwarts, and Neville Longbottom stands up to Lord Voldemort. He said that was the first time that they had ever communicated, and that scene had to be redone multiple times, and apparently Ray Fiennes did something different every scene. So it was probably a very interesting interaction with Matthew Lewis and Ray Fiennes, being that Ray Fiennes was very unpredictable during that filming, in a good way. And as unpredictable as Ray Fiennes as Voldemort could be, one of the scenes that made it to the final cut was Voldemort awkwardly hugging Draco Malfoy, because Tom Felton wasn't aware that that's what Ray Fiennes was going to do, because every time they would film those scenes, Ray would do something different. And so it kind of adds to just the fact that Voldemort just doesn't know how to love, but wanted to be like, look, I'm a good guy. Let me hug you. I'm hoping with the TV series, they make Voldemort a little bit more scary, and less, I think Voldemort needs to be scarier and not like a joke. As with every movie that Ivana Lynch was in for the Harry Potter series, she brought her own flair to the role of Luna Lovegood, where in Order of the Phoenix, she designed some of her accessories. In Half-Blood Prince, she designed a whole dress. In Deathly Hallows Part 1, the dance that she does at Fleur and Bill's wedding was something that she decided to do on her own, which is technically a reference to the books, where when asked what Luna is doing to Harry, Harry responds with, probably waving away the Raxburts. When working with so many British acting icons, it's without fail that some of the young actors who played the characters within Harry Potter would look at some of the older actors in Harry Potter and admire them. Matthew Lewis did just that. He went to Alan Rickman on one of the last days of filming and said how much he admired Alan Rickman's acting and mentorship, that thought they were just amateur actors who did not do well. And of course, that is when he was told the secret of Snape's payoff and decided to stay after that. But when Matthew Lewis, who played Neville, went to Alan Rickman, who played Snape, and said how much he admired, Alan Rickman sat down with him and gave him some of the best career advice that Matthew Lewis could have received. Sir John Hurt, who played Ollivander, holds the record for the longest gap between movies in the Harry Potter series. He played in the first movie and he played in the last movie, which was a 9-year gap. It's crazy. And he was able to keep that personality through the beginning to the end with a large gap in between. Warwick Davis, who played Professor Flitwick throughout the series and also picked up the role from Vern Troyer as Griphook, has his own foundation helping little people find acting jobs. The Willow Personnel Management Foundation helped find roles for little people, such as being stand-ins for Dobby and Creature during the movies. But Warwick Davis is one of the most prolific little person actors in Hollywood, and I don't think he gets enough credit for the things he does. I'm excited to see him reprise his role as Flitwick and see if he gives it a different treatment. I wonder if they're going to give him the big beard again, or if they're going to make him look like the bowl-cut, mustachioed man that he was for most of the series. Helena Bonham Carter made sure during the filming of any scene that she was in with Voldemort, she was always on his right-hand side, because that is the traditional location for the most loyal member of a group to the leader, is on the right-hand side. She is the right-hand man of Voldemort, and she made sure that no matter what, during filming, she was on his right-hand side. During the scene of Hermione's parents, if you listen closely, you'll hear them talking about Australia.
Looks wonderful, doesn't it?
Which is supposed to be an Easter egg to the books, where Hermione erases her parents' identities and tells them to go to Australia and live there, because that's their dream. Hermione eventually does end up going and finding them and bringing them back and fixing their memories, but for their safety, she had them move to Australia. Most of the events that occur during Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, from the beginning of the Gringotts bank heist to the end where Harry snaps his wand, take place within about a 24-hour period. They wake up in the morning, they rob a bank, and they then save the Wizarding World from Lord Voldemort, all in about 24 hours. That's why at the end of the book, Harry's like, I'm gonna go take a nap. And that's the end of the story. Voldemort's name has a special meaning. Number one, it was originally supposed to be pronounced Voldemort. You do not pronounce the T because it is a French name. But it is also meant to mean flight of death or steal or cheat death, which fits his name very well. And I have a headcanon where when he's trying to come up with the name Voldemort, he's sitting there with Rodolphus Lestrange, who is French because he is a Lestrange, is sitting there talking to Rodolphus and saying, I'm trying to figure out a name. I have these letters left. And Rodolphus goes, how about Voldemort, which means to steal or cheat death. And Voldemort goes, that sounds great. But also at the same time, Voldemort probably wouldn't have confided in his followers in the creation of his name. The music playing at the end of the 19 years later scene as the train goes off to Hogwarts is the same music that was playing at the end of Sorcerer's Stone when the train was leaving Hogwarts. Which is kind of a cool little, tying up ends and showing that, just because we've left Hogwarts doesn't mean we're going home. Not really. One of the more contentious scenes in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is at the end when Harry just snaps the Elder Wand. He doesn't repair his old wand, he doesn't give Draco back his wand, but he just breaks the Elder Wand and throws it off the bridge into a gorge. In the books, Harry uses the Elder Wand to fix his wand and then asks the portrait of Dumbledore, if I put this back on your grave and I die uncontested, will the power die with me? Dumbledore says, I believe so. And that's how it ends, is Harry gives up ultimate power because that's who Harry is. Harry was never seeking ultimate power. He was, like with the Sorcerer's Stone, was seeking it but did not want to use it. Harry was seeking the Elder Wand and did not want to use it. That's why he himself was the Master of Death, because he was seeking the Deathly Hallows not to defeat death, but to face it as an old friend. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 held the record for highest grossing opening weekend for 10 months, until eventually Hallows Part 1 and Part 2 are still a part of that. None of them ever won a single Oscar. They were always nominated, but never won. And that record still stands for today. Like, every movie that has come out for Harry Potter has not won a single Oscar, which goes to show you, just because it is well loved doesn't mean it is a masterpiece. But to all of us, Harry Potter will still probably live in most of our hearts as something that we love and will always cherish. So that's it. That is all of the fun facts I have for Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. So that's it. If you haven't watched Part 1, make sure to check it out. It's right here. You don't have to watch Part 1 before Part 2, but, you know, Part 1, Part 2, you should watch it. Also, make sure to check out the playlist for all of the fun facts that I have done. It'll be here at the end of the video. Check it out. It's hours of fun facts. So without further ado, we'll see you in the next video. Stay marvelous, and Nox.